welcome to the first episode of the Moth and Quiet podcast, in which we will be discussing today's topic um, uh, of sci-fi robots.
It's like listening to like a nervous 14-year-old give a presentation to the class.
That was what I was going for after
It's
a while.
beautiful. It works perfectly.
Today's topic is just basically cyberpunk stuff. I mean, it's robots and other things.
Yes.
Which is mostly just gonna be
It's quite loosey goosey, really.
Yeah. It's gonna be first up is gonna be the Blade Runner movies, the two big ones, and thoughts and feelings. Just talking about them. 3 years late after the discussion's already ended, and
Yep.
then
We're well late to this this conversation. But that's fine.
and then nice guys always finish last, and then we've got
Ryan Gosling, also in the movie Nice Guys. I think.
some
Pretty
video
sure.
games. Specifically Horizon Zero Dawn and Mankind Divided, and neither of
Yes.
us have played the game that the other is bringing to the table.
Yeah.
So it's going
Well,
to
I
be,
don't know anything about Deus Ex. He doesn't know anything about Horizon.
so
It's gonna be very smooth.
it's going to be like explaining Christianity to a man who has lived in a cave all his life. So
I feel like it could be anything. It could be explaining anything. It doesn't necessarily need to be Christian. It could be like explaining sliced bread to Krug, the caveman.
Krug no sliced bread.
Krug invented two things: stone spear and sliced bread.
The greatest invention, shit, fire. Blade Runner. I don't know. Should we do this chronologically? Like, speak about one movie
Yeah,
and speak
yeah.
about the other? Okay.
Let's begin with
And
Blade
then we'll
Runner
round it
first.
up with a comparison, I guess.
Sure.
So Blade Runner, the Blade Runner 2049, which is what we'll start speaking with.
You thoroughly confused me for a second there.
Okay, so Blade Runner, the original. We watched the final cut, I think it was.
Yes, the final cut.
Yeah.
The final of like 7 cuts. That's apparently the one that is supposed to be the best one, according to
Yeah.
Ridley Scott, director of the movie. So he should know, but then he did have to make 7 cuts to get it right. So I don't know. Can we trust him? Probably not.
It'll be fine. Yeah. So.
What would you well, to begin with? Do
Okay.
you think it's a good movie?
No. So I think spoilers free from the very start.
Okay. Yeah.
I think
let's do
I think
let's do like
today-
a spoiler-free bit to begin with, and then
No. I think we'll start with a spoiler-free discussion and then kind of move into spoiler territory. Although I think I'd like to add that for everything we're talking about today, we probably recommend, I would assume. So if you care,
yes.
if you, the listener, care about spoilers, I would recommend just go have a watch.
One
the
of our
video.
3 to 5 listeners on a good day. I hope you have viewed all of this stuff because it's good. All of this stuff is good.
Yeah. We recommend like everything that we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
Which is the movies and the games mentioned earlier. But yeah, we'll start spoiler free, and then we'll mention when we start talking about spoilers. So Blade Runner, starting at the very, very, very beginning of the movie, the classic George Lucas style scrolling intro.
Yeah. This is the very first thing we noticed is that it does open with a big old wall of text, and it's stylized, so it looks all right, but it is scrolling. Man, what a shit opening for such a good movie. Really,
Well,
just
it's like-
starts you off with the lowest of expectations.
It's like what movies do scrolling like it's like scrolling intro in the modern era?
true.
Like none.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's just like too expositional. Like I
There's better ways to do it.
I
like,
understand
to
we
get
have
the
ADHD,
information out.
we have
there, yeah.
ADHD brain like nowadays. Generation Zoomers, right? Although neither of us are Zoomers, or are we?
I think the first one was like the original Flash Gordon was the first thing that used scrolling text. I looked this up, and so everything after then is sort of an homage to it. But
Yeah.
even so, man,
It's
do it better, please.
it's just not conducive with the it's a visual medium. You shouldn't really be doing this. Like
Yeah.
I know text
Listen,
is a
I
visual
come to fucking books to read. I don't want to
Yeah.
read a movie. idiot. I want to watch a movie. Let's
Exactly.
get with the program, Ridley Scott, acclaimed director, great at
Was this
everything.
scrolling text an alien? I didn't think so.
I don't remember, actually. I haven't watched that
Me
movie
neither.
recently enough.
I haven't watched the movie at all, which is on the docket. But yeah, so that's the intro. The intro explains, you know, I mean, this movie's from like 1980,
1982.
1982. If you don't know the plot, yeah, that's fine.
Where have you? You've been living under a fucking
I
rock
mean,
for
I
like
hadn't
30
seen the
years. What are you
movie
doing?
before this year either, so.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
No, yeah, so I mean, it's fair enough to have an explanation.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Replicants are basically robots that look exactly like humans.
Yes, I
Um,
think the only difference between them, they are like so close to humans that Deckard says a bone marrow test is the only thing that can tell them apart.
mm, and well, they've also got the like enhanced capabilities because they're like usually
Yeah,
used for labor, like various kinds of labor. So they're
slave labor.
yeah, so they're basically the simps from Fallout 4 and Fallout 3, I guess, for those who know. Um, but yeah, so that's the plot. The
And
movie
they
has
they
replicants.
uh, they were sent to like work on off-world colonies, and they
Yep.
got banned from being on Earth.
Yes.
After I think it says something like there was a big event that happened, and replicants are no longer allowed to be on Earth, and there are now a bunch of replicants that have come to Earth, and our hero needs to track them down.
Yes.
Harrison Ford,
Harrison Ford.
very very bored man in
Yes,
this
we will
movie.
get into that
Oh
very much
yeah,
later. But yeah, so Blade Runners are basically like secret secret police who hunt down. Well, I guess they're not secret, but they basically
they're
specialize in retiring quote unquote replicants.
yes.
Yeah.
This is one of the main things that I find quite interesting as a difference between the book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and the movie,
Yes.
is that in the movie they're sort of shown as police. They're like
Yeah.
depicted at least working with the police, but in the book they are bounty hunters. They're
Yeah.
like just mercenaries who just do this shit for free. Not for free, for the opposite of free, for money.
Yeah.
It's literally the opposite of what I
Very
wanted to
much.
say. Very well done.
Very much like a private. Well, I haven't read the original book either because I'm illiterate. Um, but yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very much like a private thing. Whereas in Blade Runner, they are the law essentially. Although, although, although in saying that, I contradicted myself because in Blade Runner, it's a cyberpunk setting. So, big neon metropolis, lots of lots of people with robot parts walking around, weird clothes, mishmash of cultures, and everything's owned by corporates, including the government.
Yes.
So,
So
um,
this is there's a parallel here with we mentioned Wayland Yutani and Alien, like the whole
yeah,
idea of sort of corporations running this privatized world, and even though they might not actually be the government, they have complete control over everything.
yeah,
And this is something that they definitely lean into more in the second movie. So we'll come back to that.
yeah, and it's very relevant to the modern day. But yes, we'll discuss
Yes.
it later.
What do you mean? This movie has absolutely nothing in
Yeah,
current context.
it's one of those stories that actually holds up even like 30 years later.
Hmm.
But okay, next on my notes I had synthgularity. Don't know what that means.
Fuck, who knows?
Synthgularity followed by
Oh, oh,
huh?
the soundtrack. I've got soundtrack
Oh,
written down.
you're
I think
right.
that's what you mean. The soundtrack is what a
We're gonna
weird
get
way
that.
of phrasing
We're
it.
gonna get that with my notes a lot. It's gonna be.
Oh yeah, I've got
Yeah.
one note here that just says "Turkey man, interesting guy." I don't know what that means.
I've got one that just says "Hey Dick." But yeah, so
Beautiful.
well, the music.
The soundtrack.
The music
Yes,
is one
it's
of the
fantastic.
big things. It's one of the first things we note down. Lots of heavy synth, both in this movie and the 2049. Is it 2049 or 2048?
2049. Yes.
Yeah. Very much heavy on the synth. The synth is varied. It's not just the same like tone of Blom every time, and it's not Blom every time either.
It
Um,
yeah, it like has bits of piano and other sort of instruments that
oh
come in,
yeah.
but it's based around this sort of oppressive synth track,
Mm,
which for me at least worked really well in setting up the world in those first like
Oh yeah,
opening shots
definitely.
where you've just got the haunting. I know it's like an overused cliche word, like the haunting synth
Mm.
and the sweeping shots of the city. You're like, oh, okay,
Well,
this is a
definitely,
shithole.
it makes you feel small, I guess,
Mm,
which is one
yeah.
of the big things about cyberpunk is the individual is small compared to say the corporate or corporation or whatever, and that's another thing
Just
the movie kind of
just
gets
thought I'd
into.
mention just briefly as well that it was the music was composed by Vangelis, who
Yes.
is like a fairly famous guy. He did like Chariots of Fire and a bunch of other really good shit.
Mm.
So I was not surprised to find out that it was done by him because man
Yes.
knows his synth.
And if you want to challenge yourself, movie people, try pronouncing his real name. Get
It's you gotta take a run up for that one.
you gotta
Do you want to give it a go?
like a like a Greek Olympiad,
You
doing the
can't
long
even
jump.
pronounce that.
I can't even pronounce
It's
Greek.
gone so well.
No, I would not like to try and pronounce it. Thank you very much. But
Perfect.
so yes, so that's the music is quite good. There are specific examples. We'll probably go through the movie kind of chronologically.
Mm.
So
We both took notes while watching it, so our notes are
yes,
like very from the beginning to the end. So
so
there's probably shit that we're going to say multiple times.
I
In fact,
think
I'm almost certain of it.
I think going back to our spoiler warning here, this podcast is kind of like an incestuous family tree that loops back in on itself. Um,
Why'd you have to go with that? Couldn't have
um,
gone with like a Christmas wreath.
so like with our spoiler warning, you kind of just have to drop out. We'll be going through
Mm.
the story, and we'll kind of say like, oh, this is in the middle of the story kind of thing. But you kind of just got to tell yourself, okay, I've heard enough. I don't want spoilers for the rest of the movie or whatever. Although
Mm.
I'd recommend just watching it completely new and then come back uh,
Yes, I think so as well.
with everything we're talking about today. I understand with video games it's a bit shorter, and I don't think it really matters for Deus Ex because the story in that we will discuss very interesting, very shit. Um,
Perfect.
uh,
Horizon Zero Dawn. I was going to say the exact opposite. If you are planning to ever play Horizon Zero Dawn, which you definitely should,
hmm,
play it and then come back and listen to this because
yeah.
I'm going to be spoiling like the whole story.
Yeah. Okay. So, going straight from singularity, next on my notes is color. So I guess
Yes.
we'll be talking about the thing that everybody knows about Blade Runner,
Yeah, it's got the neon. It's
the
black and
prettiest film
rainy and lights and shit.
for a very old film. It's super pretty. That was
Mm.
like it doesn't feel jarring. I think we had more times in 2049 than we did in the original where we were like, that looks out of place.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think one of the strongest things about color and the way that the city looks in this film is it feels very familiar,
Mm,
but also futuristic.
yeah.
It's not like so alien that you're like this is unrealistic, but it's still futuristic to the point where you're like this is a city I would be uncomfortable living
Yeah.
in.
It definitely feels like it's like a low budget sci-fi city, if that makes
Mm.
sense. Like not low
It's
budget
definitely
as in
it's retro
production value,
futuristic.
but low budget as in the people who were building the city had
Yeah,
a low budget, which is kind of what it's
it's
going for because it's a
this
shithole.
is something that comes up in multiple of Ridley Scott's films. In
Mm,
Alien is another very notable example where he uses sort of like 70s 80s tech
yes.
because it is these big clunky machines. It looks very like you said, it looks like it's got a
Yeah.
low cost to it, like it was made on the cheap.
Mm,
Even though it's still obviously futuristic, like Deckard's, got fucking holograms and
yeah.
shit and whatever, but it still looks clunky and like a bit
There weren't
cumbersome and
there weren't
ridiculous.
holograms though, were there?
No, you're right. That's the
Yeah.
second film.
Yeah.
But he's got all sorts of weird. He's got like
Yeah.
the, I don't know, whatever.
The computer's on his like flying car, but
Yeah.
I think one of the cool things about Blade Runner 1982, and I think this is true, there was no CGI used, like zero.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty
I didn't know
sure.
that.
We could Google it real quick, but
There
I
is
think
some in
I
the final cut. I know because of like
oh
there
yeah.
are shots that they
Oh
subsequently did,
yeah.
but
But
in terms of
originally
like
it's
actual,
the actual
you know,
effects. I'm pretty sure all
like
practical.
set and that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's super
Which
interesting.
is
I did not
probably
know that.
why it holds up and isn't as jarring as
Yeah.
2049, which does use CGI.
Hmm.
Although the CGI in that movie is good,
Oh, it looks fantastic, but it is very
CGI,
obviously CGI.
yeah, CGI is something that the human eye just recognizes, while a practical effect
Yes.
is easy to get through the cracks, so to speak.
You are absolutely right. Wikipedia, world's greatest source, I know, top tier podcast here. The film's special effects are generally recognized to be among the best of all time, using the available non-digital technology to the fullest. So yeah,
Yeah.
no digital special effects. That's
No?
crazy.
Yeah, and that's why one of the things about this movie that I think is amazing. I think it's probably one of my favorite movies, up there with Memento. Um, and
There you go.
The
Look at
Raid.
this. Look at this Kino file. Talk about Christopher Nolan
Yeah,
film. Jesus.
Blade Runner and Memento, the most niche, like totally hipster movies that nobody knows about, and not every and like every pretentious person says is their favorite
You,
movie.
if you had grown up like 10 years earlier, you definitely would have had a Fight Club poster in your room. 100%.
Right next to my Pulp Fiction poster. But yeah. Yes. So, cinematography, really good special effects. The color, speaking of which, the color is not CGI, but I guess it wouldn't be. It'd probably be like a camera filter,
They
or
used a lot of lighting in this film, like as in they shot it with lighting
oh, they would have used
things.
like actual like colored lights, right?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My bad. But yes, the colored lighting really good.
I think they did the same thing as one of the Star Wars films where they like shot the scene, rewound the film, and then relit it, like recorded it with
Ah,
different lighting so that it came out a different way.
I see.
It's looking at the techniques that they used is like before CGI is really interesting because they did all
Yeah.
sorts of clever shit.
Yeah, and I think it works. Like
Oh yeah,
what are they called? Tyrell Corporation. It's the big
yes.
building very early on, I believe. Um,
I have a note
Yellow.
that just says George Lucas stole this for the Jedi Temple 100%. I
Yeah,
mean, really, it's the exact same building.
yeah. It's like very yellow, very, but not yellow in a gross way. It's yellow, or maybe it is a bit of a gross way. Thinking
Hmm.
about, I might bring this back up with 2049, so leave a little note on my brain, and if I don't bring this up later on, please, one of you five commenters, call me out. Um, but something about the
That's
yellow
a
looking
you've got
like
high expectations there.
yellow looking like a mother's womb is what I was going to talk about.
Ooh,
Yeah, the
have you
gooeyes.
have you seen a mother's womb? Not sure they're
Next,
typically yellow.
was there anything? And also early on, the interrogation scene between
Yes,
Leon, I believe his name is,
Holden.
and
Holden is the
Holden.
other guy.
Yes.
I googled it earlier, so I realized I didn't have a fucking clue what that guy's name was.
Holden is the Blade Runner, and Holden is a Blade Runner, and Leon is a replicant, although you don't know it at first. And so this is the
Yes.
first time we see the Blade Runner, world famous Blade Runner test.
The
That
Voight Camp test.
yes, that was the name. It's a very interesting and
Mm.
kind of foreshadows the kind of dialogue that is used in both Blade Runner movies. Very much a back
Yes.
and forth dialogue. Very interrogative, I suppose.
I really like they set it up so that even though you don't know what the replicants how they behave, you
Mm.
can tell within the first couple of sentences that Leon is a replicant.
Yeah,
Like
just
it's so clearly telegraphed without being like
obvious.
you know how like in kids shows they're like he's behind you. It's not like that, but it
or
is very clear
or
that
like in
what he
LA
is.
Noir where they're like, huh? I don't know what you
Yeah,
I don't know what you're
yeah.
talking about. What? Murder? I ain't even seen her. like like that kind of
Fucking
stuff.
hell.
But it's really good because like especially like Holden's I think it's Holden's like body acting, and acting is something that we will bring up later. Again,
Oh boy, will we
we
ever.
keep on foreshadowing our own topics. But yeah, the act
Cinematic technique within the podcast. It's very
yeah.
meta.
The acting on both Holden and Leon, it very much shows you who has the power in this
Mm,
relationship, I suppose, because Holden very much he comes across as somebody who is succeeding in his interrogation and
mm.
confirming
Which I find
what he
very
already
interesting
knows.
because I mean, again, Spoiler alert, go watch the movie. Holden fucking dies instantly. He gets shot, capped in the
Does he
eye.
die? No.
Yes, he dies. Yeah, he dies.
But they say he's
Or
injured in the police station.
oh really? Oh, okay, I might be wrong.
I thought he
In the
was just
PlayStation?
no, police station, police station.
Oh, the police station. Jeez.
Yeah, like in
Oh,
the
you're
scene
right.
after.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a deleted scene, including a hospital scene. Yeah, my
Okay.
bad.
Yeah.
Well,
So
he still doesn't. It doesn't go well for him. You know.
yeah. Because I think what was it? He was gonna do to like nah,
He does the
he gets interrupted by Leon and Leon just caps him.
yeah. He's like in the middle of I think the total question, and Leon pulls out the blicky and
Yeah.
blows him away.
The total question is great, by the way, especially for setting up the world. Because even though
Mm.
I think there's establishing shots, this scene is still within like the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
This interrogation scene, I mean, which by the way, great set. You can already
Yes.
tell like the corporations own everything because even in this interrogation room or wherever the fuck it is, um, Tyrell Corp is written on the backs of all the chairs, or
Yeah.
rather on both sides of all the chairs, just like a real
And
shitty company.
that comes up later on throughout the movie multiple times where just random shit has Tyrell branding on it, and then also there are obviously we'll come back to this, but there are obviously also advertisements everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
In
Good old corporatist capitalism I have written down. Um, and it's just like very much all these details. And at one point, Leon says something sorry, uh, Holden asks him like, "You come across a tortoise in the desert?" Or sorry, yeah, you come across a tortoise
yeah,
in the desert.
tortoise.
And then Leon's like, "Tortoise? What's that?" And then Holden's like, "A turtle? Yeah, it's like that."
I mean, yeah, I didn't really. I know why that line's in there,
Yeah.
but I felt like we already established that with that by that one where he's like, "I'm in a desert." And he's like, "Why am I in a desert?"
Yeah, but no,
He's
the point that I'm trying to come across, and this comes out throughout the movie with people being like, "Is that a real bird?" It's kind of like this running joke that none of the
oh yeah,
animals or nature are real.
mm,
Kind of like because that kind of suggests, you can infer from that that like the whole world has just been completely industrialized.
yeah,
Because even if like even if just the major powers where like the cities are concentrated were industrialized, you would know about nature from like photos from I don't know
mm,
less industrialized places, not naming names, um, the Philippines, and like it's okay, I can say that as someone who's been to the Philippines. So I think that's like
and is Filipino. That's also I feel that's a crucial element of that.
That's kind of the world building that should have
Mm.
been done instead of scrolling text. That is
Yes, I think so as well.
that is a
Um,
funny example of this movie doing something that it should have done.
yeah, exactly.
uh,
There is a bit of this that I find interesting in comparison again to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. I don't know if this is the case in Blade Runner, but in the book, there has been a massive global nuclear war, which has wiped out almost all animal life, which is why there are like synthetic animals, which I think is the idea of where the replicants came from, because people first did animals and they were like, what if we did a human? And they did it and it was like, I'm alive. And they were like, not anymore.
they were like, "Wow, this is really useful for slavery,"
Exactly.
and I don't even feel bad about it because it's a robot. Except questions of
Well, thick
can a ro-
themes.
can an android dream of electric sheep? That's the question.
That is the question. It can
Yeah.
certainly dream of a unicorn.
And so my note here has the fuck is a tortoise. Um, next up,
Perfect.
voice reverb. There was good voice reverb early on. Do you remember? Because
Yeah, I remember noting that down. I don't know what it's about.
Well, we know. The sound engineering, in addition to the music, the sound like engineering, like the actual
Oh,
sound, pretty good.
yeah.
Yeah,
This movie sounds phenomenal. Like
the sounds are
the
great.
there is sort of just the background noise is like there's constantly a hum when he's outside from the rain and from just people talking in various languages, and the more sudden sound effects like his gun specifically are fantastic. Like they are very.
Is it raining constantly throughout the movie? That's something I've just thought
I think so. Yeah,
about. Like when
it's
he's
certainly
like
raining a lot
actually
of
in
it.
the streets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, and I think the Tyrell's core, yeah, because they've got windows, but I think those are like holograms or something, or like
Could
a
be, yeah.
filter. I don't fucking know, but like when
Yeah, I don't know.
main character who hasn't been introduced yet is
Oh,
actually
yeah,
on
we
the
should probably say
streets.
Harrison Ford plays the main character, Deckard.
Yeah.
What's his first name? Like Rick Deckard?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Decade. Um, but yeah, so um, it's good that we're basically up to that. You can see all the cars, retro future. That's in my notes. Then we've got Hey Dick, and it's Harrison Ford. Good old
Yes.
Deckard.
Harrison Ford rocks up. He's having a
He's
great
having
time in this
noodles,
movie.
I
He
believe.
looks more bored than in anything except the Star Wars Holiday Special in like most of this movie,
Yeah.
and it completely works.
Yeah, that was one thing that kept coming back up as we watched the movie. We've watched the movie on our own, obviously, and then we watched it together before we did this.
Yeah.
Um, so Harrison Ford is both a good and a bad actor in
Yes,
this
I
film
have written
specifically.
here Harrison Ford's acting is certainly very much acting.
Yes. And so the first scene with Harrison Ford, I believe he's on the street getting noodles.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
He goes over and he's like talking to the guy who's speaking city speak, and then like
Yes.
mainly Japanese, and he's like, "Hey, give me some noodles."
Yeah, so we
And
should
then
let's keep talking about the setting for a bit, like we were
yes,
before.
yeah.
Now that
The
we've
city speak is a
we're
major part
actually
of this.
zooming into the city, and now we're looking at it more
Yeah.
on the
We've
straight
done the
level.
like the close pull in shot,
Yeah.
and we're now looking directly at Harrison Ford's face. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I wish I could look anywhere else.
So yes, we've very much got the very, as I said earlier, corporatist capitalism, which is something I
Mm.
definitely did not come up with. And so there's advertisements on all of the streets. The city is
Also,
Los. We're
I
set
just
in
want to
Los
mention
Angeles.
right off the bat,
Okay.
the things that are advertised are really interesting in this movie.
Mm.
First of all, Atari
Coca-Cola.
is back. They
Oh.
survived. They're back, baby.
Yeah. Well, it was 1982
Atari went out of
actually.
business. That's true. They hadn't. We'll come back to Atari.
Yeah.
I've got them written down for 2049. Anyway, Atari's there. Coca-Cola, big one.
Coca-Cola.
They show up a lot.
But that actually
in
is
both
kind
movies.
of immersive.
Yes, it feels
It
very
was.
realistic. And then the third one I've got is, and this is not in 2049 for what I feel should be obvious reasons. Why the fuck is Budweiser advertised everywhere in this movie?
Yeah.
Like the shittiest beer. I guess
know.
it makes sense in this dystopian future.
That everybody would
Budweiser
have to
is-
drink Budweiser.
Is the drink just awful?
Yeah. But yeah, basically advertisements are just everywhere because everybody's trying to sell you guns, booze, boobs, all the good stuff. But yeah.
And the bad stuff.
Yeah, and the bad stuff. And there's basically the city is Los Angeles, right? It's set in Los Angeles. It looks like Los Angeles. I'm surprised that it still looks like Los Angeles even after 30 years.
Yes.
And is also fictional, but still looks like the real deal. And so, Los Angeles, I guess, in this like timeline, is just a. Well, I don't know what the real Los Angeles is like. I think I've seen it from a distance, but it's kind of this mix of basically every culture.
Mm.
Mostly
Yeah,
Asian cultures, and then there's
yes.
a few, there's like one or two Americans running around, and in 2049 there's more like European stuff, I suppose.
I think, yeah, so a way to look at this that I found a little bit interesting was City Speak, which is the language that they all speak. It's mostly English, and then there is also elements in the first one of Japanese, Spanish, and German.
Yes.
And then in 2049, there is also Hungarian and French, and I think both films use little tiny bits of Chinese and Korean.
And I think it adds to this kind of idea that in this like dystopian future where power is very much centralized, the populations just kind of get homogenized a bit or mixed into one, and language just becomes this thing called city speak.
Yes.
Yeah. And so very much throughout the whole, on the background, everywhere, on the signs, on the billboards, you see writing in all kinds of languages. You see English, mostly like Chinese kanji. Japanese was the language I heard the most, but that might be because
it does show up
Yeah.
the most, I believe. Also, speaking of Japanese, the very last note I've got for this movie is weird geisha lady, why is she there?
yes,
Because of the advertisements, one of them shows up several times throughout the movie. It's a geisha who is, I didn't realize this, she is popping a pill. The
Oh,
reason for this, I didn't think this was very clear, but
okay.
it's a birth control pill because
That's
the
what I
Earth is
guessed. That's what I was
massively
about to guess.
overpopulation.
I should have locked it in. God damn. Yeah.
Let's
Oh,
fucking Family Feud.
I'm gonna edit it so
Uh,
that it looks like I guessed it. No, I'm kidding.
Beautiful.
But yeah.
And
So
it is
I think
like
that's
the
an
other
interesting
advertisements in
detail.
the film. It's a parody of a real advertisement.
Oh, okay.
So like all the Budweiser shit and
But
like the
those aren't
Coke stuff.
parodies. Those are product placements.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
like the giant fucking signs and that.
Oh yeah.
The advertisement itself is like referring to an existing product, I think.
Oh, okay.
Which yeah, I found kind of interesting. I like that it's because the culture is so homogenous. There is all of the advertisements are also quite homogenous. Where you've
Hmm.
global corporations that we know that are very typically Western, and then you've also got this geisha, and then I think a couple of other advertisements in the film that are like more Asian.
Yeah, yeah. They're throughout. I think it's mostly like food, I want to say.
Mm.
But yeah. So I think
Yeah,
that's an
well, I mean, the
interesting.
first thing we see him doing is street noodles.
Yeah, street noodles are the first thing, but that's not really a corporation so much as it is
No,
just like people setting up in the middle of the street, which is
yes,
very much this. The streets are very cluttered, which is a nice detail, I think. Very cluttered in either trash, people, or shops. Um,
yes.
the free pieces of the Triforce, if you will, and it's very. It looks very nice. Like you, even though it's so cluttered, you can still tell what's going on, even when they're like there's like a chase scene, for example, and they're just running through like a horde of people, you never really lose sight of what's going on.
Mm.
I think there was one scene that I'll bring up later, in which I thought they, I thought it was kind of weird, and this comes into like my only gripe with the sound design, and it's a nitpick. But we'll
Interesting.
talk about that later, I guess, because it's very minor. Um, so we'll get back to the movie half an hour in, and introduce the main character, Deckard. Um,
So first thing I want to talk about here, let me hit you with some alternate casting because I think Harrison Ford perfect choice for this role considering who else they were considering. Right?
oh, really? Okay.
You got Gene Hackman, would have been a fucking terrible choice. You got Sean Connery, awful as well.
Awful.
You got Jack Nicholson
No.
again. What the hell? You got Paul Newman, could have been
Yeah.
all right. You got Clint Eastwood. You got Tommy Lee Jones. You got Arnold Schwarzenegger and Al Pacino and Burt Reynolds.
Oh my
None of these
God.
would have been good picks.
No, no. I think maybe it's because we've already seen Harrison Ford in the role as Deckard,
Mm.
and I just can't imagine Deckard
I
like
just
any other way.
Yeah, imagine like the scene where Roy Batty like cracks his fingers. If Arnold Schwarzenegger was playing, it would be completely unbelievable.
Ah, oh, my
Absolutely not.
fingers.
Yeah, I could see Schwarzenegger as Roy Batty maybe, but no,
Oh, no, no,
definitely,
no. Howard was the
yeah.
best for
How?
Roy.
Yeah,
Especially
Howard
because
was. I
I
think
believe Howard.
he was the first choice. He was like,
We'll talk
I
about
get this guy or I don't do this.
we'll talk about this later, but Howard also has some interesting things to do, not just with acting, but also with the
Mhm.
production,
Yes. Oh,
and the script, so to
there you
speak.
go.
But
Oh,
back to
I think
Deckard.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. But back to Deckard. Yes.
He's eating noodles. He pretends to not know city speak, according to like some weird FAQ site. I think
Yeah,
he
he's
does
like,
understand it, but he just like
yeah.
I don't know
In
if
the
it's
book,
because
he knows it, and he's like, I'm not gonna make it easy for him. I don't want to like let these people speak to me in their weird jargon. They're gonna speak to
yeah.
me formally because I'm a Blade Runner bitch.
I don't know because
It's
he's
like, oh, okay,
racist, but
Deckard's a bit rude. Yeah, Deckard's not a good guy,
yeah,
which I find kind of interesting. He's just a bit of a dickhead.
yeah.
Uh-huh,
Um,
Deckard.
but I think that ties in quite well to
Mm.
the dichotomy between him and the antagonist discussed later, which we keep on saying. Um, Harrison Ford.
This is really all over the place, isn't it?
Harrison Ford, we got he's eating noodles. He's very much doing his Harrison Ford thing where he's always acting like he's bored and he's like, "Huh? Yeah, can I get noodles
He's
in
so dopey in
English?
this movie.
Hey, what's he saying?" You know. Yeah, so basically, uh, Deckard is off the force, I suppose. He's trying to retire, I think, or something like that. He says he's
I
retiring.
think he is already retired,
Yeah,
and they're like, "We need you back for one last job
yeah.
because this is an '80s movie."
They pull him back to the police station, which looks like exactly like a regular police station, like back in the 80s. I mean,
Mm,
which is kind of interesting. It's not, it's very low tech, but yeah. So basically, very very noir, I suppose, like film noir, like those old like hard-boiled detective films,
yeah.
which Blade Runner really does remind me of, and maybe that's why.
Mm.
Spoiler alert, not a spoiler alert. I'm joking. I like this movie more than Blade Runner 2049. Um,
Oh my
but
god, you've spoiled it.
my opinion, oh no, but yeah, I think that kind of old school noir stuff, hard-boiled detective, they do quite well while adding
Mm,
some new twists to it. And
yes,
Deckard is
absolutely.
very much a hard-boiled detective character, down
Well,
to not wanting to do his job.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Except there is one exception, which quite late in the film, he goes to a like a prostitute's sort of no, not prostitute, like a sort
You
of a
talking
strip
about
show.
the yeah, the strip
Yeah, with
show?
the dirty
Oh,
eyes
we talk
bit.
about his good
And he
example of
speaks in the
acting?
funniest fucking
Yeah,
voice.
we'll leave it. We'll leave it. Leave it until
It's
then.
beautiful.
So he's watching through the footage of the interrogation scene. Um, there's like blue lighting, which is good. They use a variety of colors. It's not just the yellow you see in Tyrell Corporation. I know
Mm,
that, like, when people talk about Blade Runner, it's mostly the photos of yellow stuff that gets thrown around.
mm.
But there is more than just yellow in Blade Runner, believe me.
Yes, there's a
Um,
lot. One of the things that I find notable here is because throughout the film there are eyes that like show up a whole bunch,
mm,
and the color of the eyes is really cool
yeah.
because brown eyes and blue eyes, you see the blue eyes much more often in close up.
Mm.
Like Leon's eye in the very beginning is blue, and then Rachel's eye I think is green. But like these
I thought it was
colder colors,
brown, but
might
maybe
be,
it's like
might be. Have
brown.
I destroyed my own point here?
Yeah, I'm not too
Wait, let
sure.
me Google it.
Yeah,
Doctor
because
Google. And then you're completely right. They are brown.
yeah.
I was thinking of. I know what I was thinking of. Don't worry about it.
No, I know
Yeah,
why.
no, but
Because in 2049 they say that her
yes,
eyes were green.
yes, exactly.
Um,
But this sort of the warm and cold dichotomy is quite
mhm,
interesting
yes.
because primarily when you see the eyes outside of Tyrell Corporation, either they are blue and cold or they are replicant eyes.
Yes. Which
Which
quite
we'll come
interesting.
back to probably very
Yeah,
shortly, I think.
maybe. So yeah, so Deckard, you know, lassoed onto the case. He's tasked to hunt down, I think it's 4 replicants.
Yes,
Leon, some
Pris.
Pris, yeah, is she the acrobatic lady?
Yes,
We got
Roy.
Roy, who is kind of, he's like the leader of this like breakaway 4, and one
Yes,
more lady who I forget the name
Jorah,
of.
I think.
Jora? Okay.
Yes.
And so they've like returned from, they had escaped Earth, I think it was, and then returned, and they don't know why, but now that they're back, might as well kill them. So
Yes. Oh
that's
no, I think it's the other way around. They were on an off-world colony and they have escaped to Earth,
oh
which is where it is now illegal for them to be.
oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Um, so yeah, so that's the driving plot. 40 minutes in, we have gotten to the main plot of
Bam.
the movie.
Of the
Um,
very first thing we're going to talk
yeah.
about.
So, uh, Deckard is basically a no questions asked assassin, tasked to kill
He
all
really
these
is.
people.
He is. I mean, especially compared to Kay in the next movie,
Hmm.
he is cold,
He
man.
is cold. He literally, I think he doesn't have a conversation with any of them that isn't just to kill them. Like
Yes. Is it Jorah that he talks to
he
in?
talks. I'm pretty sure he only talks. Like he has a brief conversation with Leon, but he's getting like choked out, and he
Yeah.
talks to Jorah literally only with the intention of getting closer to her so he can kill
Yes.
her.
Absolutely. And then obviously he talks to Roy a bit at the end,
But
and he
Roy
never talks
kind
to
of
Chris.
I think Roy one-sidedly talks at her. At him,
Mm,
sorry, my bad.
yeah.
But yes, so yes, Deckard is very much just a cold-blooded killer. Not cold-blooded, but you know, out to because it's his job. He just kills
Mm.
these people, doesn't ask
Well,
questions.
that's one of the main arcs of this film. Is that it starts off as this this corporate arm who's just doing the dirty work,
Mm.
and then by the end he's like running off with Rachel,
Yeah,
and
which
he's
beautifully
getting out of there.
segues us into the next scene in which he goes to
Dun,
Tyrell
dun, dun, dun.
Corporation to investigate,
Boy,
um,
does he ever!
and meets Mr. Tyrell
Takes the
and
world's most impractical elevator straight up the side of the building.
yeah. So he meets Mr. Tyrell and Rachel, who is played by
Sean Young.
Sean Young, yes. Um, and Mr. Tyrell, who I forget who he's played by, but he is also wonderful.
Joe Turkel. I definitely
Yes,
don't have the
Turkle.
casting list up on one of my tabs here.
Yes, and in my notes I have Turkle is pretty good. And
Oh, that's what the turkey note was about.
yeah.
Oh, it's all become clear.
And I think every actor in this movie is good. Like
Yes,
I
there
don't
is
think there
no
are
one
bad
who
actors
puts in a bad performance. I think the closest you
except
get
Harrison
is
Ford.
The eye guy, who I want to come back to because,
Oh,
man, I recognize that voice and it destroyed that scene for
oh
me.
yeah. But yeah,
But
the closest thing to like a consistently bad actor is Harrison Ford, and even that's like up to debate.
yeah,
Um,
I think he's good when he's not crashing planes. You know what I mean?
so I think the another thing we can bring up in the scene between the three is costuming. Especially
Mm.
because all three characters in the scene have quite distinct outfits. Rachel's got,
Man,
yeah,
the shoulder pads on
the
Rachel's
shoulder pads
outfit.
on Rachel.
Wow,
She was
this is a
very
movie
much,
from 1982.
she is very much the noir, like, main female character.
Mm.
Like, hardboiled
She is the
detective, love
femme
interest.
fatale of this
Yeah.
film.
And she's got the hair for it, she's got the
She
outfit.
has the strangest hair in this movie. It works fantastically, but it's like, I looked closer at it. It's like all of her hair has been pulled up and like made into a little wall around the circle of her head,
Yeah.
except at the back.
Well,
She's got like a
later on in the
weird,
movie, she like undoes it, so clearly it's
yes,
like put up. So
yeah, yeah.
I don't know, and
It's
it
very
looks nice when
strange.
it's undone, but very much just like prim, proper, organized,
Mm,
um, kind of, I suppose, manufactured look. Like is the ideal kind
yes,
of the
indeed. She's very much this ideal, as you say,
businesswoman.
figure,
Yeah,
where
or a
she's
woman, I suppose.
like Harrison Ford. Obviously, is like, I mean, Deckard, probably also Harrison Ford. It's like, wow, good lord.
Deckard is also just like, you know, scummy cop. That's what he looks like.
Mm.
I mean, he doesn't look like a cop. He looks like
He's
he
he
looks like an
is look,
investigator.
he's a fun character, but he really is. If you look at him on paper, he really shouldn't be. He's a stone cold killer wearing like the grottiest clothing, who just is bored
Oh,
throughout the film.
it's a nice jacket. But anyway, and Tyrell's
It
got
is a
the
nice jacket.
Tyrell's got the cone
Doesn't
back.
doesn't compare to Kay's jacket in
Oh
number
yeah,
two.
no, no, no. But Tyrell's
As a
got
man of fashion myself, I can tell you that's a beautiful cut.
I only wear one jacket because I've only got one. But Tyrell's got like the glasses. I think he's wearing like a suit or something. I don't know. He's very much
Yeah,
like
he's got
the
those weird Elton John
yeah.
glasses and like a big like boxy suit. I think.
Yeah, he looks like he's the man who's behind it all, you know what I mean? Like
Oh,
perfectly cut corners on the outfit. I don't know. I'm not really good at describing fashion or costuming, and I very much forget it easily. But
he's got. Oh, I'm looking at him. He's wearing like a very nice, like an evening jacket, sort
I
of
see.
thing with like a big white bow tie, a big like boxy
Yeah,
variety show white bow tie, and a very nice like collar. Like, so he's definitely dressed
he's very nicely
much nicer than
presented.
every single other person in the film.
And then later on in the movie, you see him in like what is basically his bathrobe.
it
Yeah,
it's so fluffy. I have
yeah.
literally written down here. I want that bathrobe. It looks like I could die into it.
But yeah, so we've got the world famous Blade Runner test again in this scene.
Yes, and it
Um,
takes like 100 questions this time.
because Rachel, and this is still early on in the movie, but we're gonna be spoiling.
I feel we can. I mean, we're spoiling the rest of this movie from now
Yeah,
on.
I mean, like, we're
If you don't
probably
want to, if you don't want the rest of this spoiled, then probably skip
yeah,
to
45 minutes
whatever other
in.
piece of content you don't care
45
about.
minutes in, spoiler warnings begin. I mean, it should be obvious that we recommend this movie and like it.
Yes.
So I don't really want to bring up like, oh, spoiler warning, because like it's kind of obvious. And with Blade Runner
Yeah.
2049, we're gonna want to make comparisons back.
Hmm.
So please, please,
If
please,
you do want to, if you do care about sports, still
yeah,
want to listen to the rest of this, then just skip to the
yeah.
whatever random shit we're talking about after
Yeah,
this part.
I'll put it in the description. Probably want to skip to talk of the games. With
Mhm.
Mankind Divided is one where I would not care if you got spoiled on it. Because yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to Blade Runner. So we've got the test, the close up on the eyes. This is bringing back what you were talking about with the eyes, with the camera. Um, they close up on
I
the
don't know about
eyes.
you. I caught a number of replicant in this film, and I think their placement is very
Repeat that.
interesting. Uh, in this scene, you do see Rachel with replicant eyes, and you also see the owl with
Mm.
replicant eyes.
Yeah, yeah,
When it like turns around, you're like, "Oh, that's not a real owl. That's
yeah.
a robo owl.
That's
That's
a.
great."
She even asks like, "Do you like our owl?" And he's like,
Yeah,
"It's
like,
fake,
is it
isn't it?
real?
Is it real? No.
Yeah, absolutely not.
No way." But like, yeah. So, um, the eye is nice. The interrogation, there's like a bit of chemistry between the two, which is quite nice. Between Rachel and Deckard, not between like Tyrell and Deckard.
Between Tyrell and Deckard. Oh yeah,
Oh yeah. But like,
put that one up on Archive of Our Own.
you very much get like another look at the process of the Blade Runner as he as Tyrell kind of is testing him here because Rachel doesn't know she's a replicant. That's the twist of her character. She's been implanted with false memories.
Oh, doesn't she? I thought she did.
No, 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 she doesn't know. And
Oh,
she's been implanted with Tyrell's like niece's memories or something.
yes, you're
Yeah.
right.
So that's why the
Yes.
test is a lot harder. And Deckard's like, she doesn't know, does she? Um, and you kind of
Oh,
get
that's
this.
right. And then yeah, a very short time later, he's like, "You're not real," and she's like, "Oh
Yeah,
no,
she
I'm
starts.
not real."
She breaks down kind of.
Yeah.
But it's this kind of thing that gives Deckard like a bit of a sentimental push. But
Mm.
so you kind of get the sense of who all of the characters are. Through their interactions with each other, you kind of get the sense that Tyrell is this guy who's basically fucking with everyone. He's
Yeah,
experimenting.
he's got sort of a god complex where he's like, I can do whatever I want,
Yeah,
and that's just it.
I don't necessarily think he's a bad person, but he's definitely
Mm.
that like scientifically focused, like doesn't
Mm.
really know, or rather doesn't really care for what his accomplishments are being used for,
Yeah,
just that they are accomplishments.
exactly. Ethics don't really seem to matter to
Yeah.
him. It's just about profit and
The
progress.
result, not the consequence. Yeah.
Exactly.
Um, and so you kind of get this feeling because Rachel's the Nexus 7, I believe, and the
Yes.
replicants are organized into Nexuses. Um, that is their model. So Nexus 6 is what I believe all of the replicants in the movie bar Rachel are. And
Yep.
Rachel is like a new experiment with implanted memories um, to help them develop emotionally, I suppose. Was the reason given, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's like a good scene. You get more of the yellow with the light streaming through, and also they kind of do this like blue VHS filter and smoke when they close in on Rachel's eye, which is
Mhm.
kind of interesting.
I
Um,
like her smoking. It
oh
definitely
yeah,
leans in
yeah,
the noir thing you were saying, where she's like blowing smoke at the camera.
yeah. She's like,
It's like it's very aesthetic, but I do like that moment where Decked's like, "Can you stop blowing fucking smoke into the camera?" And I'm trying to look at your eye with. God
yeah.
damn it.
I've got it noted down here that the window was green screened in the background. Um,
Yes, that's one of a few
yeah.
times where I don't think it is green screen. It's a painting,
Ah, yeah,
but it's very obviously not real,
yeah.
which
Um,
is okay.
although
With
I noted
most,
down it wasn't outdated. I don't know
yes,
where I got.
exactly. Most of the special effects look completely fine, and
Um,
even the ones that are clearly special effects still look fine.
And I think another thing about it was the kind of like shadows, the like watery shadows that kind of cover the room.
Yes,
Make
there's
that look.
like aquarium sort of
Yeah,
effects behind
exactly.
Tyrell. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was ethereal sort of chanting going on, which gives
Oh yeah,
Tyrell
in the
this
soundtrack. Yeah.
sort of like mystical,
Mm.
what is he, what's going on, he's got all the
That's
power sort of vibe.
that's another thing that happens in the Tyrell scenes.
Mm.
Usually, you get the kind of chanting in the background. Um, soundtrack is great. Yeah, as he brings up memories, especially. And then what have we got
Then we
next?
move on to the eyes scene, right? Where it goes to where our man Roy goes to the eye doctor.
Ah, yeah, yeah, you might be right.
Yes. Who this is the piece of casting that I mentioned earlier.
Mm.
I knew I recognized this voice. It's the eye doctor Chu. It's played by James Hong, who is Mr. Ping from Kung Fu Panda. I couldn't unhear it as soon as I
God
realized it. I
damn
was
it.
like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Damn, I can't believe they made an Asian man play a guy named Mr. Ping.
Look, man, that's
Yeah.
Kung Fu Panda. That has Jablinski himself, Jack Black. That's not what we're talking about right now.
Yes. So, with probably one of my and probably everyone's favorite character, Roy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, he speaks seemingly in like fucking Bible quotes 24/7. There's a lot of
Mm.
like Bible stuff in this movie. A lot of
He feels
Christian
much more like
symbolism.
he's orating rather than just talking to
Ah,
people.
yeah,
He's like
yeah.
giving a speech at all times.
Feels like it feels like he's got fucking experience. He feels like a veteran. I mean, I know he is a veteran, but
Yeah.
you get that sense just by hearing him speak. He's very charismatic. I think it's all in the
Mm.
performance. Um, and also what he's
Well,
saying
yeah,
as well.
as mentioned earlier, he sole choice. Ridley Scott cast him
Mm.
without ever having met him. I think he saw him in a couple of films like Soldier of Orange, a couple of like Paul Verhoeven's movies, and he went, okay, he needs to be this like cold, perfect soldier. It's got to be Rutger Hauer, and it was
Yeah.
like, bam, straight in.
I mean, he suits it perfectly. I can't imagine anybody who would really
Yes,
be better.
absolutely.
Although I'm not an acting scout, so don't take my word for it.
Rest in peace, Rutger Hauer.
Mhm.
Taken too soon, or maybe too late. I don't know. I don't really know much about the guy. He's a good actor.
Yeah. Definitely one of the greats. So, we've got houses look good. Well, that doesn't matter. So what? This is the eye scene. So he's basically like pulling the pipes out of that
Yes.
cold guy.
It's like,
Um,
oh, he like puts the eye on his shoulder, squelchy noises.
yeah.
Oh, yuck.
He's basically he's the villain in the movie because
Yes.
he's basically
Well, yeah,
extorting information
he's
out of this guy.
even if his reason for doing what he does is not wrong, he is goddamn terrifying. And
Yeah.
he's super menacing.
And
Like in that scene, I don't think he lays a single hand on Mr. Ping from Kung Fu Panda,
no,
but he is so threatening.
yeah. I mean he pulls out like his like heating support, I guess. So he starts
Hmm.
like freezing. Which
Freezing, yeah.
yeah. So I mean there's that, and he like rips his fur jacket off because he's in like this cold like
He's in
room.
like basically like a walk-in freezer.
Yeah, he's doing like science stuff. I don't know. And the replicants are immune to temperature, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
seemingly so.
and
Because
yeah,
Leon's also in there. He's like waving the eyeball all over
maybe
Mr. Ping.
Deckard should just go around with like a cup of hot water and see how people react. That seems easier than the
just
test.
just like splash him, yeah.
Yeah, like just
Um,
boil people.
I mean, they could probably fake being hurt or whatever.
Oh
One
no,
thing
if
that
they don't know
is
it's not boiling water.
oh, true. You've
If
cracked the
they...
code here, really.
But anyway, so I mean,
The eyes. Obviously, this is a scene again surrounding. We're in literally an eye shop. This guy. Oh, he seems to be making replicants' eyes. By the way,
yeah,
I wasn't sure I really understood that the first time, but yeah, he is. He's like making eyes for replicants, which is why Roy's going to see him. Eyes obviously feature prominently in this scene. Roy doesn't have replicant eyes. Leon does in this scene, but Roy still doesn't, which I think is very interesting because there are a couple of sort of false leads throughout this movie and very ambiguous characters. But it's only until later that Roy is revealed as he's 100% a replicant. And there's, for me at least, I was like, maybe he isn't really a replicant. Maybe he's just helping these people, right? Because the other replicants are confirmed as replicants very early on. Leon obviously is. Jorah and Pris, both are when we see them pretty early, but Roy, right up until a scene later on, we get no confirmation that he is. He's very strong and very scary.
Mm. You could get the sense that he's just sympathetic
Mm.
to the replicant cause, and that's kind of one of the interesting things about this movie is that the replicants aren't necessarily wrong because we'll get into their reasons behind their actions later on, but very much Deckard is just doing his job, right or wrongs be damned. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's one of the interesting parts about this movie. But anyway, what comes after this scene? I believe it may
Uh,
be Sean,
it's Deckard. It's Deckard
the
back in his
reveal
apartment.
of Rachel as a replicant to
Yes, exactly.
her. Where, oh yeah, the piano is wonderful in this scene.
Hmm.
Um, and it
I like it.
transitions
It
into some.
opens. Yeah, it opens with sort of diegetic piano where Harrison Ford's like plinking on his piano in his room.
Mhm.
He's like going ding dong, and then
Yeah.
it transitions into soundtrack piano
Yeah.
as the scene progresses, which I thought very smooth.
Yes, and it's very emotional too. Sean Jones, great actor. Um, especially because she's like,
Sean Young.
oh, Jones. Why do I have Jones? I have it written down as Sean Jones on my notes. I don't know where I got
Indiana
that from.
Jones. Indiana Jones.
We're probably talking about Indiana Jones at the same
Yeah,
time too.
probably.
But yeah. So she's like showing photos. She's like, no, see, I remember these. And then like Deckard starts bringing up memories that she hasn't brought up yet. And he's like, do you remember
Mm.
this? Do you remember this? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, they were
It's
put into.
some of it is stuff that he mentioned in the test, and one of them specifically is the question that he got her on.
Mm,
That he worked out she was a replicant, which is something about like cousin green chicken, maybe some random shit like that. But it's stuff that he mentions when he's testing her earlier on, and he's like, "Bam! Guess what? You're a replicant because those
yeah.
memories weren't real, and that's why you reacted weirdly to them."
Yeah. And I think that's kind of interesting, especially the
Mm.
way like memory kind of forms you as a person, I suppose. There's
Yeah,
lots of questions about like what makes a person, and memory comes up a lot more in 2049. But
that's one of the central themes of this movie, and then
yeah,
yeah, it comes up a lot in
it's
2029
more
is,
of a focus
are
on
these
memory.
replicants human? And if you can't tell the difference between whether one character is a replicant or a human or not, what is the difference? Does it
Yeah,
matter at all?
doesn't matter. Like even yeah, we'll talk about 2049 more once we get to it. But
Yes.
there's
The only other thing that I think is worth noting on this scene, really above all else, is this is the beginning of the theory where Deckard might be a replicant,
yeah, we'll get into that.
because we get two things in this scene. One of which is he has photos, and we learn that replicants are really they are invested in photos. As you mentioned to me when we were discussing this
Mm.
earlier, Leon at the beginning of the film is going back for his photos
Yes.
because they sort of give the replicants a semblance of a past life, even if they're
Yeah.
not their photos. So Deckard has a ton of those,
Especially
and there is
because
a
the Nexus 6 models don't have implanted memories. I believe they
yes,
know that they are replicants.
yep,
But the
exactly.
photos let them hold on. And another thing that we should quickly mention,
Yep.
um,
Uh,
the Nexus, all the replicants, 4-year lifespan, and then they are
yes.
shut down and killed.
Again, this is another difference from the book. In the book, they naturally decay to that much. They
Yes.
just their cells don't regenerate, and so they die. In the film, it is programmed in. They are set
Yeah.
up to die after 4 years by Tyrell
They
Corporation.
basically just, as soon as their 4 years are up, pop, they die on the spot.
Yep, they're gone.
Yeah.
The other thing that we see in that scene earlier is that Deckard, in one very quick shot, we see a shot of Rachel having replicant eyes. They got this weird little orange thing going on.
Oh, yeah.
We see a shot of her, and then in the background, it's unclear whether it was unintentional just due to the lighting on set, whether it was intentional, and I don't think anyone has ever denied this.
Hmm.
Deckard gets replicant eyes as well for just a split second, just one single shot. He's got those
I think
creepy
that was probably
orange
a
things in the eyes.
lighting thing because
Yes, it's.
me and
I
me and
don't think that
Quiet
is part of it,
have
but I still do think that Deckard is a replicant.
yes, this is our difference in opinion to spice up the
Yeah.
totally engineered for the podcast, definitely not representative of our real opinions. I believe Deckard's a human. Quiet believes Deckard is
Yes.
a replicant, and we both kind of have even ground on it. So
Hmm.
um,
The films, it definitely leaves it with
it leaves it up to interpretation.
ambiguity. Yeah.
Whether that makes it a less interesting question because there's no answer, I don't know. But mysteries are
Oh,
always more interesting before the answer.
the one thing that does happen in this scene that we'll come back to
The
is
unicorn.
at the very beginning. Yes, he is daydreaming about a unicorn when Rachel comes in and wakes him up, and
Hold that
that
in your
becomes
memory,
very
dear
important.
viewers,
Yes,
dear listeners, because
dear listener.
so yes, hold that in your memory. Unicorn, he's daydreaming about it while plinking on the piano. And now that we're back to the piano, our discussion has come full circle. The piano transitions into the synth as the scene transitions.
Oh boy, does it
Yeah,
ever!
and it's really, really great. It's probably, I think that's my favorite piece of music in the whole movie.
Mm.
Just that the scene with Rachel with the piano going, and then into synth. I think that's probably
It's pretty
my
fantastic. Yeah.
favorite part of the soundtrack. And then after this scene is, I believe it
Uh,
is the guy in Press, the toy maker that I forget the name of.
yes, Sebastian.
Sebastian,
J
yes,
JF Sebastian.
yes. And Press like hides in some rubbish bins, and then convinces Sebastian to let her into his
Yeah.
home. Um, and I mean, it's very interesting. Sebastian and Pris are both very interesting characters. Pris and Roy are probably the replicants that stand out the most because they get the most
Mm.
screen time. Leon's kind of interesting, and
Jorah shows up for like 5 minutes.
Jorah, yeah, she's there for like 5 minutes. I literally didn't know her name until Quiet mentioned it
Yeah.
earlier this podcast. Um, but yes, so Pris is kind of just like manipulative person, I suppose. Very weird though. Kind of like
Mm.
Harley
Well,
Harley Quinn was the comparison we kept making, I believe.
yeah. She's
Yeah,
got this weird like clown makeup later
yeah,
on. Shall we talk about JF Sebastian?
yes,
So
and his
in
autism.
in the book, he is not in the book. He is.
Oh,
There is a secondary plot of Do Androids Dream of Electric, which follows John Isidore, or I don't know how you pronounce his name, like Isidore or something.
hmm
Um, he is specifically a guy of subpar IQ, as the Wikipedia page puts it, because I couldn't think of how you're supposed to phrase it. But he is like this quite dumb guy. But
yes,
he is like an idiot savant in
right.
the book because he's like he knows a bunch about androids and he's like found out a bunch from his research. In Blade Runner, they lean into the idiot savant thing very much for
Very
Sebastian,
hard.
who is sort of the character that is like the
He's a
like the
bioengineer.
adaptation of
Yeah.
Isidore.
Um, and he's like this bioengineer. He's very good at it, but he's got like super low social skills.
Mm,
Classic.
he's a real he's
Yeah,
very awkward.
he is quite autistic, and I do not mean that in an offensive way. I mean it in a literal way. He
Mm.
is probably got autism. I mean that is what idiot savant syndrome is. And so
I'm not sure I would like. I'm not sure it's meant to be exactly that, but he displays
he
many of
exhibits the
those
symptoms.
exact
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
And so Pris kind of takes advantage of that.
Mm.
You can see he's
He
very much being
like as an
controlled.
example, he lives alone in an apartment full of like weird
Yeah,
replicant toy things that he's made that aren't. They don't
exactly.
seem to be able to think. They're just like
Kind of like
made
how
of flesh and they move, and
kind
it's
of
like,
like how
oh.
I live alone in a house filled with figurine toys.
Are you Jack Sebastian? Sebastian this
And
whole time?
so yeah, it's kind of interesting as well. Like the like his house, which is basically this apartment, and the apartments are really grotty. There is just like mud and water on the
Oh yeah.
balconies or whatever you would call them. There's like this elevator. It looks like nobody's lived in this building except for J.R. Sebastian. His room, or
It's
rather
kind
his.
of. It might be abandoned, but I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. I think it could be because every adjacent room to that you see later on, you see some of the adjacent rooms and the like above
Mm.
rooms. There's nobody in them. They're abandoned, and
Yeah.
they're very much decrepit. So I think it might just be Sebastian on his own. Probably gets money from Tyrell since they still
Yes,
communicate.
I think what it might be is that they are expensive apartments, and I
Yeah,
think he doesn't really understand that because at one point he says, "Come right in. There's enough rooms for everybody, obviously."
yeah,
But we also see people in this film and other film, well said,
Other film.
2049, who are either homeless or just vibing on the streets, you know.
Yeah. So
So I think the idea might be that it's like these expensive apartments that nobody can afford, but Tyrell's just shouting him that apartment.
maybe, yeah. I think they're just abandoned because they look very run
Mm,
down. I think if they were expensive, they would be maintained. Um,
true. Yeah, I
but
don't know.
the point is they're very muddy and gross and dark, and there's no lights
Mm,
except in Sebastian's room. And his room is kind of like this, or rather, his apartment is kind of like these 6 rooms with no doors, just like
yes.
it's like 2 big hallways, but it's 6 rooms, if that makes sense. Like 4 pillars in the middle, if you imagine that.
Hmm.
Um, and so very, very gothic. I think we noted his apartment is like very gothic
Mm,
architecture.
definitely.
There's like gargoyles on top once you see the roof and all that. Well, not like Batman gargoyles, but you know what I mean, like small engravings of gross faces. But he yeah, and like he's got like his toys all around, his like puppets and stuff that just like walk around like little soldier men and just kind of creak creak creak, rattle rattle rattle, that kind of
They
thing.
this is another thing. We just talked very briefly is the use of unusual body types to represent creepy stuff in this film. They do it
Hmm.
twice, both with people who have like people with dwarfism,
Oh yeah,
little people. We couldn't remember the correct
yeah.
terminology, and I forgot to look it up. But they do it twice. It's not great. I don't like that they do it. Yeah, it's not
Product of
also
its
not
time.
particularly effective.
Yeah,
I find where it's like they've
yeah,
got like just a short person marching around the maker's apartment, and there are a bunch of short people who like raid Deckett's car at one point. I'm like, oh, I don't
yeah.
know why they put this in. This feels very
I
unnecessary,
was like,
but it's a very minor thing.
yeah, but there is also the kind of idea that well, because it's only really, I think it's that one scene where little, I guess little people. Sorry if
Mm.
that's offensive. I hope it's not.
That seems to be the correct
I
term,
think that's
but
the
maybe.
correct term. I've only watched the one movie where what's his name pretended to be a little person. I think it's
Wait,
called like
what?
it's called like Tiptoes, and what it was like, I don't know, some famous actor was pretending to be a little person. It's like the equivalent of blackface. But anyway,
Gary Oldman?
yeah, 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 maybe.
Oh yeah, it is. You're right. What
Yeah.
the fuck?
And so anyway, let's not diverge. Um,
Mm.
I think maybe one interpretation of that could be that the less um, the less supported usually turn to criminal activity, and in this kind of society, it's always going to be the normal looking white people that end up at the top of
Mm.
society. But we can't really tell because it was in the 80s. It was
Yeah,
probably
it's
it's
hard to tell if
very
that was a direct thing or not,
yeah, it's
like a deliberate
very
thing or not.
normal for them to do something like that without thinking of like how it works in the world and how it's just like, little people are weird, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
From what I know of Ridley Scott,
yeah.
I think he is like fairly not racist.
He's
Uh,
progressive. I mean, female
yeah,
lead in
more or
Alien,
less.
everybody knows about that. Um, and I mean, a lot of people
Do you
would
know
say
they?
those are
This
good
is
too.
obviously slightly off topic, but they
What?
came up with the surnames for all of those characters first, so that they could cast them regardless of gender,
The
which I
Blade Runner
think is super
characters
cool.
or
No, the alien
Alien?
characters like Dallas
Oh,
and Ripley and that.
oh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the thing we're actually talking about.
Yeah. So, is there anything else to say about that scene? Um,
No, I don't think so.
no.
We missed a scene very briefly.
Oh,
He goes to Leon's apartment, picks up a snake scale and a
oh.
picture, and fucking 80s zoom and enhance. He zooms, he enhances, he zooms again, he enhances
I
again.
think that's the scene after the Toy Maker one though, isn't it?
Yes, but he goes and picks up the snake scale
Oh, does he? Okay.
before the tournament. I believe so, but I
Okay.
might be wrong.
But yes, that is where the world famous enhance, closer, back, where Harrison
Yeah.
Ford is at his most boredest. I mean,
Oh boy, I like that he's bored during his dumb detective work, where it's like
yeah, because that would actually
zoom,
be boring.
enhance, whatever. But the problem is, again, much like pretty much all of Harrison Ford's roles except for like two of them.
Mm.
I can't tell if he's actually bored or if he's playing a character.
Yeah.
I don't know, and
It's
I
a
don't.
very
I kind of
convincing.
don't care.
It's a very convincing veteran detective kind of
Mm.
thing, but Harrison Ford looks
Harrison
like
Ford,
Harrison Ford looks like a bored veteran detective,
yeah.
which is the problem. I don't know if it was typecasting or not.
I don't think so. I think he's doing a pretty good job. I think
Can you
the problem
imagine?
with it is, I think in this film he's doing a really good job of acting like that. And
Mm.
then in the second film, in 2049, he is 112 years old. He absolutely is not acting.
112 years. Harrison Ford is fucking ancient.
He's decrepit, man.
He's a fucking tree in tears. He's
He's
like,
really. And how old is he? He's like 78. That's pretty old.
yeah, but it's not like Lord of the Rings tree people old, where he's like,
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
uh,
What's after this? Oh, the press scene
yeah.
where he goes. Oh, he goes to the club and he puts on a character.
Oh yeah. Um, but before that, we should talk about him going in a bar because I think there was something I wanted to mention. That was
Okay.
earlier I mentioned the one like sound engineering thing I didn't
Mhm.
completely vibe with, and I think you'll recall because I mentioned it when we were watching it. Um, the bar that he goes to a bar. It's like I don't know what kind of bar it is. It's like the Honeybee bar from Final Fantasy VII. And so like
What a topical reference.
hey, Final Fantasy VII Remake came out like last year. Or was it this year? I don't remember. I didn't play it.
I don't know.
I don't really care.
I've never played Final Fantasy. I don't care
Yeah,
about Final Fantasy.
me neither. And like, so, where were we? Oh, right. So
Goes to the
like,
bar.
they serve like worms at this bar or whatever the fuck it is. What did they serve?
Oh, you're right. Yes,
Yeah, they
they
serve like,
serve like a drink with wormies in it.
yeah, I think it's like supposed to be protein, like is the idea. Like it's like
Yes,
meat.
they lean into this in the next.
Yeah.
Uh,
So basically, people eat worms at this bar. They go out to get drunk and eat worms. So typical Saturday night for me. Except I'm not gay. So they
what?
what? I was using worms as a yeah, whatever. So like the ambience is really good. Sound engineering is good. The like background noise is convincingly loud, but it's done in a way
Yeah.
where you can still hear what the characters are saying. Like
Mm.
because they
But Deckard does still look like
yeah,
he's been at a
Harrison
bar
Ford
for longer than he
refuses
would
to
like
raise
to
his voice. I he speaks in the same like volume in every
be.
movie ever. Um, except for maybe like 2049, but even then it's like a decibel louder. Like
Yeah.
he needs to like emote, I think.
Mm.
He needs to just like you need to shout over the other people, Ford. It's a bar scene, okay? It's like a club. It's more like a club because there's like strippers and
It's
stuff.
I feel it's a club. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's strippers. Or well, they're like dancers, but same thing.
There's
In a
strippers.
in a world like
It's a
this, they're
strip club.
basically
It's definitely a strip club.
Yeah.
When because he like sees that's where Jorah works.
Mm. Yeah,
Because
their outfit
she's
is
like
very.
the main attraction.
Mm.
Crazy snake.
I think, and then he calls up Rachel, right? I don't remember why, but the audience suddenly gets a lot, or not audience, well, I guess it is the audience, but the like general passers-by in the background get a lot quieter, so we can hear their
Mm.
conversation.
Yeah, they sort of fade out.
Yeah, you saw it as like a sign of kind of intimacy between Deckard and Rachel,
Yeah,
and
it's like
I thought it was just like unrealistic.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I think not every. It's definitely a stylistic.
Mm.
I think not every one of them lands.
Yeah.
But that's all right. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing's
What I do
perfect.
think is interesting though is that he uses a video call to Rachel,
Mm.
and I'm not too sure when video calls were invented.
Don't think they were invented then. I'm pretty sure
Video
Mac,
call-
the Apple Macintosh 2, which is obviously like this was fucking well before like any kind of technology. This is just the one that I know that this is my benchmark. Came out 87, so 5 years after this movie. Video calling, I think, came way later. Like
yeah. I mean,
way
Google
the fuck
says that like there was like video conferencing ideas in like 1870s, 1927, but like the idea.
1870s. Oh, hello, dear chap. Welcome. It's
Yeah.
good to see you. It's
I
on the
know, right?
telephone,
But I think, like, realistically speaking, it was like actual, because he's just using like a
Yeah.
phone, like on a wall that has a
Mm.
video monitor, and it's like, when was that? Probably, I mean,
It
maybe.
took, and apparently AT&T launched the first true video conferencing system in 1970, so it
Right.
was out by then.
Okay, it was out, but I mean,
Interesting.
still
Yeah,
kind of
okay.
interesting that I believe I'm not too sure about colored video
Yeah, I don't
for
think so. Oh, actually, I would have think. Yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
yeah, it would
I
have
still
been.
think it's kind of interesting because I'm not too sure if like video call was widely commercially
Mm.
available. But I could be talking out of my ass because I didn't grow up
It
in the
seems to
80s.
be having a very brief look. I'm not exactly doing a deep dive here.
Yeah.
It seems to be it was in the 80s is when they got
Mm,
it working good, and
yeah.
then before then it was like working shit. So
Yeah.
you know
But it's very much an
this.
idealized video call.
Yes, exactly. This is. I
Mm.
could see this being the case in like
Some
the 90s to
some
early
evidence
2000s.
of the like high tech of the world because interestingly, besides like the flying cars and stuff, you don't see much high tech in Blade Runner until 2049.
Mm.
I don't think so anyway. I
Yes,
mean, besides
I
like all
agree.
the
There's a few
robot
like computers
vehicles.
and shit and flying
Yeah.
cars, but there's just not that much,
It's
which I kind
mostly
of like.
it's mostly just the replicants because it's realistic. I mean, like not everybody would have access to just like high tech stuff. And this movie is set in what, 2017?
Yes, I think so.
Something like that.
2019. Oh no,
Hmm?
I don't fucking know. I don't
I don't
know.
know. It's around like late
Yeah,
2010s.
2019. I know the book is set in 1992,
And
which I think is hilarious
boy, were
because
they all off the
and
mark.
they were miles
Oh,
off.
and I can't wait
Imagine
for
we
2049
thought we
to
would have
also.
replicants and we had the Beastie Boys. What the fuck? Where did it all go wrong?
And I mean, I can't wait for 2049 to also be wrong because it probably will. But,
Mm,
but I mean,
yeah.
look, space travel in the next 29 years, not impossible.
Well,
Well,
Elon Musk.
well,
Elon Musk said he was going to Mars. Now he's selling his shit to the U.S. military. Where's it going? I don't know. We'll find out.
to
Maybe he's gonna nuke
Mars.
us.
Um,
He's gonna fucking find Mars.
yeah. So I mean, like whatever, fuck it. They couldn't have known. Everybody thought flying
Yeah.
cars would be around, but they're not.
This movie came out in 1968. This is like the
Movie.
height of technology is
68.
like. No, sorry, the book. When they first thought it up, like so when the
Yeah.
setting was made, is like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was came out in 19. So they probably didn't have the greatest of ideas about what the future was going to be like. And then Blade Runner obviously is 82, where I guess they were like, in 30 years we can go from here to there, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think in this bar scene, club, whatever. The reason he's here, he's hunting down
Jorah.
Jorah. And this was Quiet had no idea what I was saying, but I was just like, oh no, wait, here's Harrison Ford as a good actor. This is the one time he changes his voice. And it's only when he's acting in
Oh,
the movie, like in universe in the movie, that he becomes a good actor. But anyway,
because for most of the movie he sort of
he's just kind
sounds
of
like this. He's
he's
got a very monotone
he's
sort of
playing himself.
kind of
Yeah.
noir sort of sound, and then for that one scene, it's like,
Mm.
it's me,
Yeah,
hello.
he's from the
It's
he's from
incredible.
he gets into a dressing room. He's like, "I'm from the Committee of Moral Abuses." You know those perverts. They put their dirty holes everywhere so they
He
can
just
look
plays the
through.
most like fucking 80s dork.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
incredible.
And he's like this like, oh, I'm just trying. I'm looking out for the betterment of our maladjusted prazzies. And it's just like okay. And this is the scene where we get to see some titty. And neither of us
Great.
cared.
We sure do.
I
Ridley
don't know
Scott, he sure
why.
put him in for no reason.
Yeah, I'm not too sure why because like
Ah,
first
it
trip,
was the 80s. Every fucking movie had to
yeah,
have.
at least like 5 seconds of nudity. I think it's the only nudity in the movie, isn't it?
I'm pretty sure it is, yes.
Yeah, and it's
And
like
I think the difference that's interesting between this one and 2049 is that in this one it is sort of used like to present it as sexy, whereas in 2049 it's very much not. There's nudity in that movie, and you're like, this is upsetting.
this is gross. But yeah, in this movie, it's just like I guess it's fan service. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
don't
get
know.
that she's like a
It could be
stripper.
any number of things.
I get that she's like a stripper, but she's already not on stage. This is like
Hmm.
their dressing room, and
Yeah.
she's getting dressed in front of this nerd going on about moral abuses, who she
I guess
later,
it's comedy, right? Like it's funny
yeah,
where he's like
it's
moral
funny,
abuses and she's getting naked. It's like, oh,
yeah,
whatever.
and like, I mean, she guesses that he's a Blade Runner because she attacks him, without him really doing anything. Um, and then there's quite a nice chase scene actually. She's wearing like
Mm.
this weird like transparent raincoat. I don't know what that's about, but like,
Yeah, it just looks like she's gonna vacuum seal us,
yeah,
which
exactly.
looks very strange.
It looks like you could like pump air into it and she'd float away. But
Mm.
anyway, um,
This was actually my favorite music in the
oh
whole
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Is so he shoots her once, and then they fade in the smooth
Oh, the
synth.
jazz. Oh,
Yeah,
synth.
like the
Yeah,
jazz synth kind of.
yeah,
It's like, oh, I like that. Um, and then
yeah.
he shoots her more times than I thought was necessary. 3 times.
Well, she's a
One would have
replicant.
done it.
She's a replicant. They don't die after one
Yeah,
shot.
whatever. His gun feels like it's a
Except
hand
in the
cannon.
next scene where Leon dies from one shot.
Yes, exactly.
But
Although to be fair, his head fully explodes.
yeah. So chasing,
Yes.
chasing.
So
We'll talk about
this
the
this
chasing
this
Jorah.
part goes quite quickly, but yeah, he chases down Jorah. There's like smooth jazz. There's some fake snow, which I like. That's kind of fun.
It's a fun
As
scene.
she like stumbles into a shop front and collapses and dies, and that is the
Definitely
first.
very much like a detective chase scene, kind of.
Yes, exactly. And that's the first of the 4 replicants.
Retire.
He pulls out the blicky and he retires the fuck out of her brain.
Yeah.
Uh,
We should talk about his gun while we're on the subject.
we should. I like it a lot.
Love his gun.
Oh
Harrison
yeah.
Ford's gun is awesome.
In the
I just
book,
want to slobber
they
all over
are
Harrison Ford's gun.
in the book they are laser pistols. I think
In
that
laser
is.
pistols?
I'm so glad they changed it to from that
Yeah,
because
bullets are way cooler than
the
lasers.
sound of the gun in this is fantastic. It's a real boom when he pulls the trigger, and you're like, oh, that looks like it's
Sorry, I
gonna
was
hurt.
touching my ear. Yeah.
Which I guess is why it makes it more impactful when Jorah takes 3 bullets, because you're like, Jesus, that first one looks like it could have put down an elephant,
Yeah,
and she's
he,
still going.
she is still going, and you really see that even though she's like a sex worker replicant, I think she's still
She
like,
is no. Pris is the Pris is
Chris
beauty and military, and then she is assassin. She's built for assassination.
oh, I see, but she's still like strong, and you kind of get that
Oh,
sense,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
And so like, yeah, you've got all that.
In
And then,
constructing the the gun themselves, by the way, bit of trivia for
ooh,
you.
yes,
That's
okay.
what this section is called, trivia for you.
Trivia
Uh,
for you.
It was constructed from 2 guns, a big old revolver, and a fucking huge rifle.
Oh,
So even though this is like a handgun, they made it out of just a big bulky gun to give it that really like pow
I
look
see.
to it,
okay.
and you can definitely tell.
Yeah. It's looks fucking intimidating. It's got a big old boom on it. It's got the like 2 little LEDs on the bottom.
And it still maintains that sort of classic detective with the stub-nosed revolver look to it, even despite all that. It's just it's a really good,
It looks
interesting
okay.
little piece of design.
I am very, very, very happy with the gun in this movie.
We've been talking about the gun for far too long.
No,
We're really gushing here.
but it's just a cool gun, and there's more.
It is a cool gun.
There's more.
I guess it's
info
just it's representative of the design in this movie, where it's like a lot of creative and interesting choices to get a pretty fantastic result.
while still fitting into the world. It never goes
Yes.
it never goes Star Wars. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It always stays kind of grounded.
I think laser guns would have ruined that if they'd
Yeah.
kept it from Do Androids Dream. It would have been a bit ridiculous.
It would have been
but
kind of comical because like
Mm.
I don't know the cyberpunk genre in general
mm,
usually works best when it stays a bit grounded to reality because it usually deals
Yeah.
with like very very close themes to our daily
Yeah.
lives. But yes, we'll talk about right after he retires. What's her face? He immediately encounters Leon.
yes, he's right across the
He
street.
is literally across the street. Don't know why.
Maybe he's meant to go pick her up or something.
Yeah,
But I don't know.
they've
It's
run
kind of that
away
one you can
from-
kind of justify because
Yeah.
maybe he's like tracking Deckard.
But
or
then
tracking
Rachel
Jorah.
is also across the street.
Yeah. so he sees Leon, he loses track of him, and then he sees Rachel immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
It's
And then,
that's a bit
Leon
much.
attacks him and just like absolutely pulverizes
Oh,
Deckard.
he
He
smashes Deckard.
he
He
pimp
is going
slams Deckard's
through.
gun out of his hand.
Yes,
Sends
and
it
then it
flying.
skitters all the way along the street to where we get a fun little jump scare where Leon's head gets blown right open
By Rachel,
with
yes.
a kind of goofy special effect, but understandable without digital technology
Mm.
by Rachel, and that's two down, two to go.
Yeah.
Also, Rachel, man, she's a hell of a shot.
Yeah.
What she did not
Well,
miss.
she is a replicant. And then
Yes.
this kind of is a bit of a turning point for Deckard and Rachel in their relationship. They
Well, should we talk about the next scene?
yeah, we're gonna talk about the next scene. So
Deckard's really rapey.
he is very rapey. I
Boy,
theorized that
oh
it was
boy.
just Harrison Ford letting loose.
Yeah. Just going for it. Yeah, so
He's
they
getting
go
some
to
of that
Deckard's
Hollywood
apartment
energy out.
and they talk for a bit, and then Rachel tries to leave, and he's like, absolutely not.
No,
He
you will
slams
say
the
you
door
love me.
and fucking restrains her against the wall,
Yeah.
and then makes her kiss him,
Yeah.
and she's still not having it.
It
And then
is-
he continues to stop her from leaving, and she finally relents. He is so creepy.
The little people discussion from before could be interpreted as like a product of dystopia. This is just rapey.
weird. I don't what was going through
I
their
fought it
heads
the
at this
first time I watched a movie. I fought it the second time I watched this movie, and I'm gonna think it every single other time I watch this movie.
It's I don't know what the point is.
It's strange. I don't know if it's because Harrison Ford is not exactly smooth. Maybe if he was more charismatic and Rachel and Sean Young looked less like she was resisting.
Terrified, yes.
Yeah. Like if they could have played it as he's like sweet talking her, but he just looks angry. He just looks angry.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford
it's
has
just- it's a
angry
bit
and
weird.
bored. And moral abuses committee. But it's
he
weird.
needs to go
But
moral abuses committee after that one.
speaking plot-wise, and not about Harrison Ford being a creep, or I guess it's just Deckard. I don't want to talk about Harrison Ford. I don't know.
Look, that's a man who's crashed 2 planes.
Yeah,
That's a-
man, I don't know
Someone
much
take
about
the
Harrison
planes
Ford.
off him.
I don't want to like accuse him of being a rapist or anything.
Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't
Maybe.
think
I
so.
mean, he works in Hollywood, so. Nah. I'm
What's
kidding.
he's crashed multiple planes. What a champ.
Yeah.
Anyway, also apparently 1977 charge. Oh wait. Nope.
Nope.
Ford signed a petition calling for the release of film director Roman Polanski. I don't know if you know anything about Roman Polanski, but in 1977 he drugged and raped a 13-year-old.
Ah,
Allegedly.
allegedly. Of course, allegedly. It cost 5 cents to put allegedly in your newspaper.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you ever get sent to court, just send in $1 saying, "Can you append allegedly to the end of my like report?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." Yeah. So back to the
Anyway,
actual
yes,
scene. The
whatever.
development between the characters, ignoring the weird rapey undertones. It's kind of this turning point where Deckard is like, "Well, I owe you," and he starts considering things outside of his kind of black and white job perspective, where it's like kill all replicants because that's his job. He's like, "Well, I mean, this one seems pretty human," and he kind of has this turning point. You kind of see the effects more in 2049. He very much sees Kay, the main character of that movie, who is a replicant. He sees him as an equal, or at least like he doesn't put him down for being a replicant.
Yeah. I think one of the strengths of 2049 is that it builds off a lot of things that Blade Runner did not completely totally address. Like these things are left without a note of finality, and 2049 really builds on them, which I think is good.
It ties all the loose ends, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
Or rather, finishes some of these trains of thought. So I think that's an important part of Deckard's character, this kind of turning point.
And we then, bam, hard cut, stop the music, stop the sound, we're going straight to my boy Roy. He's rocked up at Chris and Sebastian's apartment, and he's like, "Hey man,
yeah,
they're all dead." And Chris is like, "Whatever." And I thought, Yikes.
Yeah,
But
it's just those two. They start making out in front of Sebastian. Sebastian immediately leaves, which I can't even
yeah,
chalk up
that's,
to
that's
poor.
such a funny
I
fucking
can't chalk
scene.
up to poor social skills because I
Yeah,
think anybody would do that. If
yeah.
you're
I have
sitting,
previously done that.
Sebastian is literally just sitting at his table. I think, is he eating? I don't know. And Pris
I think he's
and
having breakfast, yeah.
yeah, Pris and Roy are making out like literally above him.
Yeah, they
Like
literally walk into the
like
room and
he's
then
in
start
between
making
them.
out right next to him, and he just like,
He's
without
just
looking
like,
at them, gets up and leaves. It's so good.
which I mean, yeah, can't blame you,
What a
Sebastian.
champ! Oh, he does also tell them that
That they what?
uh,
Sorry?
they're going to die.
Oh,
That their lifespan is being cut short, and
oh yes.
Pris is like, "Oh no," and Roy is like, "I know, I
Yeah.
can tell." Um,
Um.
but Sebastian also tells them that he is going to die. He has a genetic disease due to his bioengineering, so he is also going to die like them, which is why he's so sympathetic
Does
to
he
them.
say that?
Yes,
Oh.
it's called Methuselah syndrome. I wrote it down.
Oh.
Um, so yeah, that's why he works with the replicants, is because he feels like he's connected to them. And again, this
Hmm.
ties into the question of what is the difference between humans and replicants, if they are, because I mean, they're pretty much the same. They're just,
Yeah.
they're both going to die with a premature aging thing, that type of thing. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And
Sebastian and Roy then roll
and
up
also
to
they're,
Tyrell.
I mean, they're intimidating him a bit on top of that.
Oh yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
They're like, ah,
Um,
aren't you glad? Aren't we glad that we have such a good friend who's gonna help us out and not leave us to die? And he's like,
what a
well,
great
now I gotta.
friend you are.
Yeah, and he's like, well, I guess I have to now, otherwise I'm gonna feel real bad.
Oh boy.
So
Yeah.
then they go to, no, we should keep talking about before we get to Tyrell.
Hmm.
Sebastian is doing the chess scene, and this is a bit of great
Yes.
foreshadowing because Roy hasn't really been too delved deep into. You don't really know what he's about besides that he's kind of the leader. Um, and so Sebastian's playing this game of chess with Tyrell. I guess he's just memorized the pieces on the board because they're both geniuses.
They phone each other up, I think, is the
Yeah,
idea, and tell each other the moves that they're going to
yeah,
make.
exactly. Um, and so Roy sees the chessboard and he starts playing around with it, and then Sebastian's like, "Oh no, you can't do that. That would be checkmate or whatever." And then Roy starts like playing the game. He's like thinking about it, and then they go to Tyrell, and in the like small amount of transit time between uh, them leaving Sebastian's apartment to going to Tyrell, Roy is the one telling Sebastian what moves to make
Yes.
against Tyrell.
It's a fantastic turnaround of who's got
Yeah,
control in this
and
situation. It's really good.
Roy, and Tyrell doesn't know that it's Roy making the moves, and Roy checkmates Tyrell, which is
Yeah.
not only just like kind of really
Kind of
interesting,
rude.
kind of rude, kind of interesting to Tyrell and Roy's relationship, and also
Mm.
foreshadowing that Roy has like heightened intelligence. Like he
He's
plays
also it also foreshadows that he's about to checkmate out of Tyrell.
IRL
By which I mean brutally kill him.
brutally.
Because they go up to Tyrell's room. They're like, "Hey, man, this is a sick room. By the
Yeah,
way, you're in checkmate." And Tyrell's like, "No, I'm not." And Roy's like, "I'm going to die. Make me not die. You
yeah.
can. I know you can." And Tyrell's like, "Sorry, I can't. You're way better than humans, and if I did that, you wouldn't be. So I'm just
Well,
gonna
no, it's because
not."
he literally cannot without like
Yeah.
breaking Roy,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
Roy is because like they have like a little scientific debate, and Tyrell's already like fought
Hmm.
and tried everything.
Yes, which is again talking about Roy's intelligence. It shows like he knows all of these things that Tyrell, the creator of these replicants,
Mm.
understands. So it's quite good. Tyrell then is like getting Roy is getting really close to Tyrell, and
Mm.
this is man, he's so menacing.
Yeah,
And you get a close up of their eyes, and then Roy kisses Tyrell for some reason. I think
well,
it's
it's
like
like
a
a
father son thing.
yeah. I mean,
And
a
then
very
he
deep,
fucking
loving father-son
crushes
thing.
his eyes
Oh yeah,
like
he
the
crushes
mountain
his
style.
skull. Yeah,
Yes, and it's brutal. It's
it's
got the eyes
brutal.
motif coming back. It is a painful death to look
Yeah,
at.
it's
It's real good.
it's very much just like yeah, such a painful death, but it's also kind of a bit foreshadowing some of the later things in the movie.
Yes, and
He's like, you've accomplished so much. You're such a great person.
yeah,
What does it matter whether you die in t tomorrow or 20 billion years?
yeah,
And it's kind of foreshadows the famous monologue, which we are approaching.
yes. The scene then concludes in an interesting way, I think, because it's kind of unclear what happens. But
Hmm.
I mean, maybe it's just me being a dumbass. But Sebastian sprints for the elevator.
Yeah.
Roy drops Tyrell and goes after him, and then the next shot is riding the elevator down. And then later on, they mention, Tyrell, Roy riding the elevator
Yeah.
down alone. And then later on, the police chief tells Deckard Sebastian's body has been recovered.
Hmm.
So Sebastian's definitely dead.
Yeah. Probably
Which
cut
there's a
that
sequel book to both this and Do Androids Dream of Leaving, which it's a very weird book, and Sebastian just comes back to life in it. But I guess that's non-canon.
No,
It's
he
whatever.
faked his death like Sherlock.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah, so there's that. Roy is very menacing. This is probably his most villainous actions in the movie. Um, from
I don't know. He
ah,
does break Harrison Ford's fingers.
yeah, but he also crushes a man's skull
So fair.
with his
Yeah,
hands, which was
yeah.
completely unnecessary,
But,
especially after
but
that deep loving kiss. Really pulling a double take there.
I thought he was just going to leave it with the kiss. He was just going to back away. And then I heard the crunch, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
he's not backing away. Oh, boy.
But yeah, I suppose that's taking vengeance on your creator to a new level. But
Which is, of course, a theme that comes up later again
yeah.
in other of Ridley Scott's movies, specifically Prometheus and Alien Covenant, where we've got
Yeah.
Michael Fassbender, who is, personally, I think in terms of playing a robot that thinks it's human, he is incredible. And if they were ever to do a Blade Runner remake, I would only want to see him as Roy. Like, he is... In the other Ridley Scott robot, Are They Human, Are They Robot films, that, weirdly, there's more than one of them. He's fantastic in those, and I think it's interesting that this clearly was something Ridley Scott cares about, because he's come back to it, like, now. I mean, Alien Covenant came out, like, 2017? So, clearly it's something that matters to him, and I think
Yeah.
the presentation in the film, it's very obvious
I mean,
that...
Fallout 4 2016, directed by Ridley Scott,
Oh, God.
with guidance from his best friend, Hod Howard. No relation to
Ladies.
Todd Howard.
No relation.
Um, but yeah, I think it's especially interesting because it's getting closer and closer to becoming a reality. I mean, we already have like animal cloning, so human cloning
Yeah.
is probably not far off the mark, except they probably will come out like freakish monstrosities. Um, just
So, just like regular human.
yeah. Uh, but yeah, so I think that's kind of interesting. But we'll go to the next
Yes.
scene because we're getting
The
towards the end.
film moves quite quickly from here on out.
Uh,
It's been kind of a slow burn up until now,
hmm.
and
Well, actually, I
now.
think the movie's kind of well paced, but you're right.
Oh yeah, for
The
sure.
action
But
is
like in terms of
definitely loaded in
yeah,
the latter half.
in terms of action sequences and things actually happening, there's not a huge amount of it. It's just people thinking in the first sort of half, which is fine. I like
Yeah.
it, but yeah, it really picks up here where
All the payoffs are in the
Deckard
second half.
Deckard goes into the creepy room with all the dolls,
Yeah,
and
he's in Sebastian's
Frist,
room now.
wearing her terrifying makeup, has pretended to be one of the dolls. I don't know why she didn't just jump out from behind the door. That would have worked. Instead, she dies like an idiot, and she also dies again really painfully. Like she gets shot in the stomach, and she's like writhing around for a solid moment there.
She does
And
like
it's,
this weird like exorcist thing. Well, not exorcist, but maybe
well,
it is
she
exorcist.
kind of. To me, it looked like a robot malfunction.
Yeah.
Which I guess is the point.
Or like a toy malfunction, because she just
Yeah,
flails
exactly.
all over the place.
All her limbs just start going back and forth, like she's running in the air. It's quite rough to look at. Why Deckard didn't just shoot her in the head and put her out of her misery, I will never know. Maybe he only had a limited number.
To be fair, it's very confusing considering all the other replicants don't really seem to react to pain. And it's just this one who throws a hissy fit when she's been shot. It's very interesting and bizarre, but it's quite a fun little fight scene too, with her like flipping all over the place and Deckard just kind of
Yeah, it's pretty good.
getting his shit
Yeah,
kicked in.
I like how he's completely outmatched every
Yeah,
an android. If he didn't have a gun, he would be dead like every
yeah.
time.
But I guess he wouldn't be fighting them if he didn't have a gun
Yes,
because he wouldn't
that's a
be
fair
dead
point.
then.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, and
Uh,
then after that,
Roy
Roy.
rocks up, and we get that whole thing where his hand
Sorry, what'd you
he's
say?
sorry, I cut off there. His
Yeah,
hand is closing in, and he's starting to die, which we'd seen very
yeah,
briefly earlier in the film, so it's foreshadowed a bit. But yeah, it's interesting this kind of setup where we've got Deckard is going around. He's ready to. He just wants to escape, and all he has to do is outlive Roy, and Roy
mm,
just wants to seemingly kill him.
yeah. Or at least
Um,
fuck around with him.
yeah, it's kind of I don't know why he did that for a long
I
time.
guess
I
it
guess
doesn't
he
really
had a change of
matter.
heart right at the second,
I don't-
like at the
I think
last
it's
second.
more so that it doesn't really matter. Like this is probably the last like being that Roy is going to
Yeah.
interact with. I would draw it out too. Like, I mean, I think Roy is also waiting for his impending doom, and he's waiting for Deckard to just be basically immobilized, so Roy can be
Mm.
like, okay, now to tell you about all the shit I went through.
Yep. What a champ.
Now that you can't move.
Yeah. There's a bit of a weird bunch of stuff. At one point, Deckard's climbing up a mantelpiece, drops his gun, and instead of going back for his gun, the one thing that has saved him against literally every other replicant,
Hmm.
he climbs the mantelpiece, which is something that Roy can very obviously do.
Yeah, because
Fucking
Roy,
genius level cop here.
the fight scene between Roy and Deckard is really well choreographed, I suppose.
Mm.
There's a lot of interesting stuff like what
As
was it?
previously mentioned, Harrison Ford, Deckard gets his fingers crunched by Roy. He
Yes,
like
Roy.
breaks two of his fingers, which is yowza.
What is it? Roy like punches through a wall, I think it is, and
Yes.
then grabs Deckard's hand, pulls it through,
Yeah.
and then breaks his fingers, and then puts the gun back in his hand, and he's like, "Now shoot me,"
Yeah.
which,
And Deckard, being a clearly someone who has common sense, just gives it to his other hand. Just holds it
yeah,
in his other hand.
I mean,
Which I mean, whatever.
ballsy play, Roy, but you didn't
Yeah,
exactly
it
think
really
it
is.
through.
I mean, I guess he's about to die anyway.
I mean, Deckard missed anyway, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, he shoots through the wall, and then Deckard realizes he basically realizes he's outmatched the moment
Mm.
Roy takes off all of his clothes and starts
Yeah.
animal hollering.
That looks so funny. If you've ever seen like any like
Yeah,
18th century bathing suits or like 19th century bathing suits where they've just got the really short shorts,
yeah, that's basically all he's wearing.
like
He's basically
sprinting
just
around the
wearing
place.
wet boxes. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of gross.
Um.
But oh, there was
And
one
then
interesting detail with the after the finger breaking scene, where
mhm.
Roy is like, "I'm gonna give you to the count of 10 or whatever it is, or I'm gonna
Yeah.
count down from 10, and then I'm gonna kill you." And then so
Yes.
Deckard starts running, and Roy
There
starts,
is. This is a bit of a Benny Hill chase scene where they're just
yeah,
going in and out of room.
yeah,
All
but
right.
Roy, instead of like, well, I mean, he's not chasing him because that's the whole point of the countdown.
Yes, I know. It leads
But
into that chase.
he he uses this time to go like check on Press, and you can see that he
Yes.
clearly cares for his
He like
comrades.
gives her a kiss and touches her eyes
He
again.
does
The
the
eye thing.
yeah, and he's and like he even stops counting because he's breaking down from crying.
Mm.
It's pretty emotional.
It
Um,
is.
it's
It's a good scene.
it's really well done. I like Howard in basically every single scene he's in. But
Yeah, he's a very good actor.
yeah, so the
I do
chase.
find it kind of funny in this last scene. You can hear his Dutch accent in a couple of.
Yeah, yeah.
It comes through like when he's running and talking at the same time.
Mm.
It's a bit goofy, but yeah, it's. I mean,
But it kind of fits in with him like fucking around
yeah,
basically.
yeah, exactly. It gives
Like
him sort of this weird, slightly unusual tone
kind
to
of
it. So yeah, it
nihil
works
yeah,
good.
kind of nihilistic, but at the same time, it's like I wouldn't say his time has been wasted, which is kind of the point
Yeah,
towards the end because they're on the rooftop. Deckard basically misses a jump and is hanging off the edge of a roof. Oh,
yeah,
Roy's hand stops working at one point, so he stabs a nail through it just to get it back and working
yeah.
better.
That's unusual, but fair enough.
But
It works,
I
right?
think the really cool
There's a bit of Jesus crucifixion.
yeah, but the really cool thing is Deckard's like hanging off the side of a roof. And obviously his fingers are broken, so he's having a hard time getting up. Roy, Chad man, jumps the goddamn roof, lands perfectly, turns around, and pulls Deckard up with one hand, using the hand that is not only dying but has a nail through it.
Yeah,
which
it's
just shows
a
that Roy
champ moment there.
Roy is just like the coolest guy ever. He is the greatest. And he doesn't even kill
I
Deckard,
don't know
even though
about that.
he doesn't even kill Deckard, even though he could. And then we get the Tears and Rain monologue, the really
Yes, we
good
do.
Tears and Rain
Classic,
monologue.
famous one. Oh god, I'm
Did you
yawning
really
because I'm
yawn in
tired.
the
Not because
middle
I'm
of
not because I'm bored. I'm tired. Um,
Wow.
it's
Yeah, the
yeah.
Tears and Rain
Like,
monologue. I've
oh,
done
whatever, man.
Shakespeare
Everyone
did it
knows
better.
that.
And
Yeah, it's obviously a fantastic moment.
when we were watching, we both went quiet
Yeah,
without even like mentioning like, oh, shut up, it's the scene. We just listened because the music is good. One of the best pieces in the soundtrack. Um,
yes.
the
Tears and
lines are good,
Rain.
and I think I mentioned earlier that I wanted to talk about how uh, in some production things, he made some edits to the monologue. It was originally different. It was originally, as I believe Howard described, a bunch of science mumbo jumbo, sci-fi mumbo jumbo or
Yeah,
something.
there's a bunch of shit like laser things off the belt of
Yeah,
Orion and the Tannhauser Gate and shit,
and how
which
basically
is not real.
Howard basically just edited it. He made it into what it is now, and
He specifically described this as being opera speech,
yeah,
which I find kind of ironic because he names the Tannhauser Gate, which is Wagner's most famous opera potentially. I mean, he
yeah,
did a lot of opera, but yeah.
yeah.
So
Well,
there's that, and there's a couple of other things which are very um, off the shoulder of attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion,
hmm.
and whatever C beams are, and
Oh,
then the Tannhauser Gate. So yeah, there's a lot
yeah.
of
But still,
interesting
it
stuff.
kind of, especially with his performance in the music, gives off this sense that
Uh,
this is somebody who's experienced a lot. His
let
time.
me
Huh?
let me read out to you the original version of this. Right,
Okay.
it's not nearly as good.
Okay.
I've known adventures, seen places you people never see. I've been off-world and back. Frontiers! I've stood on the back deck of a blinker bound for Plutician camps with sweat in my eyes watching stars fight on the shoulder of Orion.
Hmm.
I felt wind in my hair riding test boats off the black galaxies and seen an attack fleet burn like a match and disappear. I've seen it. I felt it.
Yeah.
Um, and then that was like the earlier draft.
And then
Again,
Howard
not
changed.
quite as good one.
Yeah,
And then I believe
because
you mentioned earlier how redid it himself.
yeah, and that added in a lot of the like, for example, the famous "Tears in the Rain" line that is
Mm-hmm.
basically the title of the monologue at this point.
Yes.
Um,
And Time to Die,
Time
specifically,
to
he added
Die.
that in,
Yeah,
which is, I think that's good.
I think that was a good one as well, especially with the like kind of slow motion freeze frame, or not freeze frame, but just slow motion as he died,
Mm.
and Deckard's bored reaction. um,
There is one of those, there is a real they clap sort of moment, as Wikipedia describes. After filming the scene with Howard's version, crew members applauded, with some even in tears.
yeah.
I can
Um,
understand why that would happen, but it's still
no.
kind of a bit goofy. But yeah, I mean, it's just, all of this is just to say it is a fantastic
Yeah.
moment.
It
It
very
is
much
obviously
sums
the
up
defining moment of this movie. It's just,
very much sums up
chef's kiss.
one of the like major plots I would say like or themes I suppose of both movies. Like it's not it's not like whether you're a robot or whatever that makes you human. It's just whether you've experienced life, I suppose. This is kind
Yeah,
of
exactly.
this is kind of what Tyrell was kind of alluding to earlier. Even though his life was only 4 years, kind of his time was not meaningless just because it's short. Which of course you can extend to all humans because in the grand scheme of things, our lifespan's pretty short. I'm only gonna live until tomorrow, looking at my watch, but I
Oh
would say
no.
I've wasted a day of masturbation. Um,
Damn. It's all over now.
it's all over. The first and last episode of the Moth and Quiet podcast.
It's this is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the
This is
eulogy.
it. I'm glad you could all be here, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great monologue. A lot of people have said, probably, said and described it in more emotional and beautiful ways than we have, but
Oh,
of course,
definitely.
our genuine reactions. We really like the monologue.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just a real good one.
Sincerely, I think it's really great. Yeah. Um,
There is only one thing I think left to talk about before we move on to 2049,
To 2049.
uh, which is is he a replicant?
Yes. So the movie ends after this Roy death scene. The guy, his like, I guess it's like
Gaff.
Gaff shows up.
Yes, it is Gaff. He's like, he shows up and he's like, "It's too bad she won't live, but
Yeah.
who does?" It's
But
like,
who
oh yeah,
does?
okay,
And it's like, well, yeah, that's tying into the themes as mentioned
yeah,
earlier. And he Gaff is this guy who's been doing like origami the whole movie for whatever reason.
yeah. He's done like a bunch of
Little
random origami animals, and he
origami
just sort of leaves them
animals.
around the place.
And I hope, dear listeners, that as good little members of the Committee of Moral Abuses, you kept that unicorn from earlier in your mind, because Deckard returns to his apartment to find that Rachel is still there. They
For
decide,
some reason, she hasn't run off.
yeah,
God knows why.
yeah, I know, right? They decide to leave and fall madly in love, probably. And
Yeah.
there's
Well, we'll talk about this in a second.
yeah,
I've got something to say here. I've
and
got
there's
words.
an origami unicorn left on the floor, which
Yes.
is
That's
yes,
probably the
interesting.
most solid piece of it. Deckard
For,
being a
for
replicant
Deckard being a
because of the
replicant.
whole memories are implanted thing. So
Yes.
it's the idea that his dreams, Gaff can see his dreams because he's a replicant. Gaff knows, but is not going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
And the film ends with he sees it, he considers it, he thinks about his daydream earlier, and then he walks straight to the elevator and shuts the door,
And
and that's the end of it. And I think it's a great ending.
It's
It
good.
really is.
Yeah.
Um, I think Deckard is a replicant
Hmm.
because I think there is too much pointing to him to be that. While you
Right.
can see it as him not being that, I think there is this, a few other things earlier, like the eyes thing, just tiny little things, and his emotionlessness, like the photos, his lack of emotion to real people, but his emotion for
For
other
Rachel.
things. Like Rachel, it grows to each other only throughout the film.
Right.
But
But
I believe you disagree.
yes, so I mean, and this is getting a little bit into 2049, but I don't think Deckard is a replicant. There is, of course, like the in-universe stuff, like Deckard lives past what would be his lifespan. Assuming Deckard is not a Nexus 8, which would be odd, unless he was made after Rachel. But
I
I mean,
think 'cause
that
my
could
my
happen.
understanding of like the if he is a replicant
Yeah.
theory is both he and Rachel, they are the only Nexus Sevens.
Yeah. And while I think it's mentioned that Rachel has a lifespan of 4 years, I
I
think
don't.
we couldn't.
I think it is, but it's not. Like that
Yeah.
might be unreliable narration because obviously it's programmed in, so they could just
Yeah.
take it out.
We both thought that it's like something programmed, or it could be like something just like a byproduct of their engineering, like because Tyrell can't fix it, right? Which means, well, why can't he fix it?
Or he chooses not to.
Yeah, but he said it's because it causes mutations if he doesn't put it in or something. And I'm guessing like
Yeah,
that would lead to like a decay or something. I don't know.
I think
So
so.
instead he
I'm
just
not
has a kill
sure. I think
switch.
it's again it's deliberately ambiguous,
Yeah.
so
But
that you
yes,
can sort of see it either
there
way.
are other things, of course, that I think points to Deckard being human. I think one of the bigger themes is that there is no difference between robots and humans, and so having the major relationship be between two replicants kind of defeats the point because we all know, or I think we all can intuit, that a robot would be able to love another robot. But I think it just kind of fits in with the theme well. And obviously we can't use like real evidence. We just have to say what we think fits because it's never confirmed. It's all up to
Uh,
interpretation.
in terms of the people who made the movie,
Yeah.
Michael Dealey and Harrison Ford think he is human.
Yeah.
Hampton Fancher prefers it to be ambiguous, and Ridley Scott thinks that in his version he is a replicant.
Right.
If you are wondering, Michael Dealey is the producer and the screenplay by Hampton Fancher. So, like,
Yes.
obviously influential people on every single side
Yeah.
um,
There's multiple
can
viewpoints.
take either view. And I ultimately I think it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't, but it's an interesting discussion nonetheless. And I mean,
It
either
does
way,
also.
yeah.
Either way, what?
Either
No,
way,
go.
it doesn't really take away from the messages. Even though I've said like, it's
Yeah.
important that like it's a human falling in love with a replicant or whatever. Like it doesn't really matter. It contributes either way. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, go on.
It does segue into the final thing I want to talk about in this movie: the
Yes.
versions.
The
All of the
versions.
versions.
Here we
There's
go.
fucking 8 of them.
8
That's
of them.
too many. There
There
doesn't
are.
need to be 8.
I've only
Um,
seen the final cut, so Quiet will be the.
I've seen 2 versions. I've seen the final cut, and I've seen the version. I don't know which version it is. It's got narration.
Yes.
Deckard just talks over the top, and God, it's bad.
Yeah.
You thought Harrison Ford was bored making this movie. Going back over the top, he's like, the Tears in Rain monologue happens, and you're like, wow, that's beautiful, and it finishes. And
Yeah.
then Deckard's like, it was then that I realized I was the dumbass. I'm like, fuck off, Harrison Ford, leave me
Uh,
alone. It's just bad. And
yeah.
the final cut, I'm glad Ridley Scott didn't make it. Even the director's cut, I think, is not quite good. The final cut is absolutely the best cut.
Yes.
There are a number of things that they did for it, which include digitally remastering stuff, like in the final shot of the Tears and Rain thing, Batty releases a dove, and the dove
Yes.
flies off. And in the original version, it looks really goofy because it clearly just flies off into real Los Angeles.
Yes.
And they fixed it so that it looks like actual Neo Los Angeles. That's good. The main thing is the unicorn scene that is then added
Yes.
into the final cut,
That
which is not in previous versions, which Scott obviously had artistic control, and as mentioned, he wanted Deckard to be a replicant, so that's
Yes.
probably why that's in there. But
he still
it
leaves
still
up to
leaves it very
interpretation.
ambiguous,
Yeah.
yes, which I think is the right choice.
Mm.
However, just for anyone who's thinking of going to maybe watch this film, because you definitely should, please watch the final cut. Dear God,
Yes.
there's a great video by H Bomber Guy on YouTube about director's cuts that mentioned this.
Mhm.
God, why did they make 8 cuts and all of them are bad? I just don't understand.
Well,
7 cuts and all
they
of
were
them
trying
bad.
to get it right with each cut, and they got closer and
It's
closer. Yeah.
uh,
Well, I guess with that, and a perfect ending to our discussion of Blade Runner around the
yeah.
2 hour mark, is now the time to move on to 2049.
Did we really take 2 hours to discuss that?
Yeah, we're
Jesus.
at 1 hour 56 minutes. We'll end the
Perfect.
episode here.
Damn.